Pizza presents STP. The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle and Adam Wilde.
Leafs trade, looks at his phone, for not Luke Glendening. Yay! All right.
Yeah, so the Leafs get a couple things here. One, Tomas Turtleneck, who is not a fourth-line center at all. He's better than that. So that's really good. Two, sensible turtlenecks. Really good. Three, not Luke Glendening.
and not Luke Glendening for 2 more years after this, too.
I mean, there's still time, you know. But dude, Buchanan's contract, I'm not being negative. It's real. Tomas Buchanan is done after this season. Glendening's got 2 more. Maybe they get him in the summer.
Thomas, he'll probably go back to playing in Montreal. And it's funny, Montreal Canadiens fans are already looking. If he plays every single regular season game for the Leafs, it will bring him to 999 games in his career. Aww. So it's conceivable he plays his 1,000th with Montreal.
Oh, interesting. I was talking to Berkshire because he's going to play his 1,000th as a Leaf.
He's not.
Interesting.
Nice.
Very interesting. He's going to be in an outdoor game with the Leafs.
That's right.
That's super weird. I mean, depending on, I guess there wouldn't be
if you'll be able to see him with those white jerseys, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, he'll have a blue turtleneck.
Of course.
He'll be the only player you can see.
So I wanted to ask the question. I think it's an important question. Who wears a better turtleneck? Dmitry Filipovich or Tomas Turtleneck?
See...
Because I met Dmitry. Jesse and I met Dmitry at NXT. Guest of Eric Young. You didn't come because you had to do other things.
I had to do other stuff.
It was too unimportant for you, superstar.
I had pizza. Shut up.
But yeah, Dmitry came up and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" Like introduced himself, and I was like, "Wow, that is a sharp dressed man."
Dmitry is very much the new old school, whereas Tomas Turtleneck is the old school.
Right.
It depends what kind of vintage you enjoy. I
Right.
mean, Dimitri's are growing on me, though.
His vintage seems to be Scotch of at least 15 years or more aged.
See, I feel like he's one of the blended Scotches, but high-end. High-end blended.
Okay.
Whereas, like, Buchanan's type of Scotch is like the diesel that, like, hardened former oil rig working Scottish men drink instead of tea.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
I want Tomas Turtleneck. I want him to catch on in Toronto. I want people to start wearing turtlenecks to the game.
No, that's weird.
No.
Dude. It's weird.
Why?
It's weird that he's a Leaf, period.
Yeah.
That's so
I'm
weird.
so cool with it.
You know,
if you look
what's
on
more weird?
his 5-on-5 numbers are great. I'm jacked about it. Listen, I'm not saying that Montreal didn't make out well in this trade because I think they absolutely did.
Fantastically.
But if you look at what the Leafs got, this is what we needed.
There's so much to unpack here. So, one, it's, okay, what's more weird? Tomas Buchanan's in a Leafs uniform. He's been with the Habs since, I think, 2004. Or, the fact that a trade broke before we started recording our show.
Buchanan's. Still weirder.
I don't know. Well, you know what? This has happened before. You know, we got a poor batting average, but decent slugging.
Right.
Did I get it, baseball person? Did I get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. There you go.
No, that made sense.
Yeah. Nice. Go me. They're Mark McGuire at the tail end of his career. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He struck out a lot.
Yeah.
But he hit home runs.
Yeah,
See, I watched highlights in like
Thank you for your
2007.
20-year-old reference.
Or something like that. No, so the deal, which I'm sure you know, is the Leafs get Buchanan and Kyle Bond in exchange for a 2018 second. Is it the Leafs second or the Sharks?
It is the Leafs second. The Leafs, thanks to Roman Polak and James Reimer 2 years ago, have a second and a third from San Jose.
Yeah. And also Renat Valiev and Kirby Reichel. So we're going to have Eric Engels on in a moment. We can maybe learn more about Kyle Bond and Tomas Buchanan. What I understand, Buchanan still has a lot of gas in the tank. He's kind of a jerk. Loves giving you little butt ends. His 5-on-5 numbers are good, like you said. He's a penalty killer. And
he's
I mean,
fast.
he's probably better than Dominic Moore, who has, I think, been good recently. And I think the fourth line had the best possession of any Leaf line last night in their win over the Bruins. So it's unfortunate for him.
The thing is, though, if you look at it, like, okay, so now you've got Plekanec and Moore. and Bozak and potentially
someone gets
Nylander
hurt-
and Marleau and Matthews and
Exactly.
Kadri. Like, that's the point, right? Is to stack your team with as many centermen as you can.
And what this also gives the Leafs is time. You don't need to bring Matthews back 10 days from now. You don't need to bring him back 11 days from now when the Leafs play the Sabres. You can wait after the 4-day break and then they play the Penguins. Maybe you don't want him playing a hard game against the Penguins and you can play him after that. You can rest Matthews right up until right before the playoffs if you really want to. It could potentially give them that time. Habs fans, here's what you get, you lucky sons of guns. For the second time in as many seasons, the Leafs give a second-round pick to a divisional rival. Not a huge fan of that. But the other option was like, I don't know, Mark Letestu. I'm not sure how much you're actually upgrading there. Or Luke Glendening, where I think you're taking a step backward there. So that would have been bad.
And the second from San Jose is going to be higher than the second from the Leafs, which is
Yes,
nice.
it will.
Yeah. So we're keeping the
I think
better
it
pick.
partially depends on how they do in the playoffs, right? Because if
true.
either team makes the Final Four, then we're
yeah.
talking. We're having a totally different conversation, and the Sharks have a lot of cap room. Valiev was a favorite of Babcock's with the Marlies, so I was surprised to see him given up. And Kirby Reichel, I mean, big body forward. He has some NHL experience. Son of, is it Warren Reichel?
Yeah. Both of
think
those
it's
guys,
Warren
Reichel and Valiev, could be depth guys for Montreal. But the thing was, they just were not getting into the, especially Kirby Reichel. There's no way he was getting into the Toronto lineup. There's no way.
Yeah, was especially buried. Valiev was at least, he's played games with the Leafs and he was called up earlier this season and not used. Like Reichel, I don't even think there was really a prospect of him getting called up. A little bit surprised, given that the Leafs might lose JVR next season, because I looked at Reichel as a guy who may get an audition there, but
I think with Andreas Johnson scoring 49
so
points
good.
in 49 games.
yeah, he's so good, and we know what Mark Bergevin likes. He likes his big boys, so he got two. Valiev's big. He likes big boy hockey, Jesse. He got Valiev, who's big, Reichel, who's big, and honestly, with the Habs playing the way they are this season, like how bad they've been, and I mean, they're probably maybe selling off even more guys. And with all their injuries, I think Valiev and Reichel could get into the lineup.
Absolutely.
Like right away.
Absolutely.
So I really like the trade for the Habs.
And it
For
doesn't.
the Leafs, I mean, it depends on how they do, right?
It doesn't
that's
really
every deadline rental.
It really doesn't take away from what the Leafs already have, and then I think that's the fear. I don't think management really wants to dip into a guy like Andreas Johnson. Like, I just don't
No.
see them wanting to trade a guy like that.
No, they shouldn't.
And
They
that's the thing,
definitely
is that
shouldn't.
those are fringe guys who are coming out of prospect territory. It's do or die for those guys now, right?
Well, Valiev.
And it's,
I was
listen,
about to say Valiev was drafted in 2014, which is true, but it was the second year he was eligible to be drafted.
yeah,
So he's
22, 23?
Yeah, around there, and Reichel, I think, is around the same age. They're creeping into what the hell are you territory.
Yeah,
So,
and the second round pick is clearly the piece that matters in this for Montreal, I would think. The other part,
those two are bonuses if they pan out.
right? Darren Fife actually tweeted me. He's like, "Hey, overlooked aspect. The Leafs also have an extra roster spot now."
Woo! No, they don't. You see, I said that to Berkshire.
But Braun.
Put Canitz and Braun,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
and then that's what I thought too.
Underrated.
Montreal
Jesse
is
pointed
also
something out.
sitting at 4 second-round picks in
Wow.
this upcoming draft,
That's-
as well as 3 fifth-round picks.
Wow! So they got
Yeah.
their own first, their own second, Chicago second, which is getting better by the minute, by the way. The Leafs second and Washington second. Holy mackerel!
Yeah, so those will probably be moved to trade up, I would think, because you don't sit on 4 second-round picks and take 4 guys.
Why the hell not?
Here's how
Why
valuable Thomas Plekanec is in Montreal, by the way. Jeff Molson tweeting this recently. Merci, thank you, Plecky, for everything you did to this organization. You are a true pro and a gentleman. Bon chance. And that's pretty cool. He's trending on Twitter because of it.
Oh boy, it's a shame he's not a Hab anymore. It's even more of a shame. Like a lot of Habs fans got to be feeling pretty bad right now.
Yeah, well,
he's a Leaf.
Gilmore was a Canadian once, so this
But
is
at
payback.
least he wasn't traded from the Leafs to the Canadiens, though.
Yeah, I think he was traded from the Canadiens back to the Leafs.
I want to say yes, you're right. Actually, you're right. I think he was traded to. I want to say the Devils, or was it the Blackhawks? Him and Wendell Clark, they just started putting around the NHL.
Gilmore was
towards the
traded
end.
to New Jersey, then signed in Chicago.
I think you're right, yeah.
Hey, we gotta get Eric Engels on the phone.
Sure, let's do
So
that.
I think that's important time to pause and dial that phone.
Yeah.
Eric Engels, Sportsnet.ca, Montreal Canadiens reporter extraordinaire, just finished up his column and is now making time for us on the Steve Dangle podcast. Eric, thank you so much for rejoining us. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a long time no speak. I'm happy to speak to you guys.
Seriously. Now, this deal...
We'll call you tomorrow if something else happens.
This deal is very, very interesting from a few different perspectives, and we could start with the fact that this deal for Montreal at one point could have included being a part of an Erik Karlsson deal, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot floating around, and I can't say for certain, because things didn't go down that way that was going to happen. But one of the things that I had heard last May was that Montreal was among 4 teams involved in a potential Erik Karlsson trade, and that might have seen Plekanec going to Tampa Bay as part of all the package kind of scenarios that you could run through. But since that didn't happen and is off as far as I could tell, this deal went down with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were a team that were in the hunt for Plekanec going back for quite a few weeks now. And I think it's a great addition for the Toronto Maple Leafs and a deal that worked out really well for the Canadiens.
So, I mean, this is a little tinfoil hatty, and I mean, it sounds just based on what you're saying that it wasn't all that close to happening, but I wonder if part of what the Leafs get out of this Plekanec deal is they were kind of cutting off that 4-way deal at the pass.
I mean, we can't get so far into the ifs that we get that far into them, but
too much.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you can make that argument, though I highly doubt that it has anything to do with anything. I think, the Leafs had an opportunity to add a centerman that can move up and down their lineup, that at 35 years old, he may have lost a bit of offense, but has not lost any speed, virtually any speed. He can shut down some of the best players in the world, and a real role player for a team. Mike Babcock is going to have such an appreciation for this player, and that Claude Julien had massive appreciation for Thomas Plekanec. Claude was here from the day that Plekanec stepped into the lineup as a young player drafted by the Canadiens organization, and he was here towards the end and still using him, upwards of 17 minutes a game on a team that understandably has depth issues up the middle, but Plekanec is such a reliable player. He's such a predictable player in terms of what you're going to get out of him night after night, and he's such a consistent player. So this is a great addition for a Maple Leafs team that looks a lot stronger up the middle than they did yesterday.
So, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was going to say, the one thing we've noticed from literally day one of the season is Babcock didn't appear to be the biggest Dominic Moore fan, even though, in my opinion, he's been playing better recently. But that leaves 4th line now. Potentially, when Matthews gets back, of course. Komarov there on the left. Kapanen, who Babcock raved about yesterday, on the right. And now Plekanec. And they don't have a 4th line anymore. They don't have one.
And all things considered, I mean, if they keep Dominic Moore through Monday, that's serviceable playoff depth. I mean, he has a history of being a performer in the playoffs, and you never know when you're going to suffer injuries, and the Leafs are dealing with that right now, and it's a big factor. And to be able to get a quality center like Plekanec who can play in every situation, they will rely on him as their number one penalty killer, if not their number 2. And he can play at 5-on-5 against the best players in the world. And to have that kind of player that you can rely on for more than 12 to 15 minutes a game, that's worth the cost that they paid.
It's one of the things that's been interesting about the Leafs is that they have this. We make a big deal out of everything at Toronto, as you know, Eric. But
you do?
but one of the things that happened last night was you have the Marleau, Kadri, Komarov line reunited, and they go 60% possession against the Bergeron line, which is the big line for Boston, who they're likely going to play in the first round.
But they look terrible on 2 goals.
Right, of course. And then you've got another line that could shut it down, because it seemed like you got the Matthews, Nylander, Hyman line, which are they're young. You got the Bozak, JVR line, which is you'd never throw those out there against offensively strong lines. And then so now it seems like we've got a center that can actually kind of jump in, and you wouldn't be afraid of Kadri Kadri's line or whatever line he's on being out against the best players on the other team.
And that's kind of the whole issue with Bozak on the Leafs lineup, from an outsider looking in, is like he's right in the middle. He's a guy who's going to get those kind of third line minutes who can't necessarily play the role of a third line center. So to have that kind of depth behind him and alleviate him of those responsibilities, knowing that that's not his forte, I mean, it's a great move by the Leafs. Now, all that said, this was an excellent move from the Montreal Canadiens.
Yep.
And one of the biggest reasons why it was is because Thomas Plekanec had no trade protection in his deal. Everybody knew that. It was one of the things, I remember the day that he signed this deal, going back 2 years, which was a 2-year, $12 million deal. My column that day was about the fact that he had no trade protection, and it was very unlikely that he would finish this deal in Montreal. I might have been wrong on that day had the Canadiens had somewhat of a much more respectable season than they've had so far. But considering the road they went down, it was clear it was going to go that way. Now, knowing that he had no trade protection, Marc Bergevin, out of respect for a guy who played 981 games with the franchise, went to him and said, listen, we're in a position where there's a lot of interest in you. So-and-so teams are involved. Do you have any preferences? If you do, we will try to work, with no guarantees, we will try to work something out for you because we like you. We want you to come back in the off season if we can have you back. There was a contract that was worked on to extend Plekanec if for whatever reason he wouldn't have been able to move between now and the deadline. And I got to believe that the parameters from those contracts, from everything I've been told, would extend to the off season. So the fact that Thomas Plekanec told Marc Bergevin, listen, I don't want to go to the Western Conference, and Marc Bergevin had a deal in principle in place with the Winnipeg Jets and opted to trade him to the Leafs. He keeps Plekanec happy. It's bittersweet, obviously. He didn't want to leave Montreal to begin with. But he keeps Plekanec happy and potentially opens the door for him to come back. And if the return on Plekanec is a second-round pick, Kirby Reichel, and this young Russian defenseman, and the fact that he might actually get Plekanec back on a very cheap contract to serve as important depth on a center line that is not all that good in Montreal, but stands to get better with some other moves that Bergevin makes, then he's really knocked it out of the park on this deal. So for all the criticism Marc Bergevin has received over the last year, and a lot of it very justified, this is one move where he really deserves to be commended, and it's looking great for the Canadiens.
Absolutely.
It seems like just a fair trade.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When you have two parties happy about what they're doing, even if Bergevin is not able to secure Plekanec on a new contract come the off season, then he still has to be happy with what he got in this deal. Yes, he had to retain 50% of Plekanec's remaining $6 million cap hit. I mean, that is a negligible part of this. It's great for the Maple Leafs, but it really doesn't matter to the Canadiens considering most of his money has been paid and they have the fifth most cap space in the NHL. So that's not even really a factor. And the one beauty of this whole situation is if all that good faith leads to Plekanec coming back, the Maple Leafs have 18 games remaining in their season, which would bring him to 999 if he plays in all of them. And he'd get to play his 1,000th game as a Montreal Canadien. That's special because, he's 13th in team scoring in the history of a team that's won 24 Stanley Cups and has more Hall of Famers than any other team in the league by more than double.
That's nuts. That's crazy.
He's 7th all-time in games played for the franchise, and a guy that was drafted in the second round and turned out to be a star player for them at one point. He had 5 seasons of over 20 goals, 6 seasons of over 20 goals and 5 of 50 points or more.
Wow.
He played on one of the best lines we've seen in the last 20 years with Andrei Kostitsyn and Alex Kovalev in 2007, 2008, and had a 69-point season. I mean,
nice.
He turned out to be a star player in Montreal, and then he turned out to be an elite shutdown player who helped so many players come up in this system and turn young players into better ones. So good for him, and good for him to get a chance with a team that has some real potential moving forward this season.
Now that the Leafs have Plekanec and seeing the haul that they traded for Nash, is it more likely or less likely that they trade JVR?
Leafs insider Eric Engels.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't see a scenario where the Toronto Maple Leafs are considering moving off their roster right now. They don't have a reason to do that. They don't have incentive to do that. And when you look at what James Van Riemsdyk has done this season, it would go down as, let's put it this way, it'd be a lot more shocking than seeing Erik Karlsson move.
What do you think the return, if there is any, on Max Pacioretty will be? Do you think he gets traded?
I do. I'll tell you this: the Canadiens did not have a deal that was close to what they were wanting to accept on Pacioretty as of yesterday. If they had, he would have been held out of last night's game as a precaution. That said, we know that now that Nash is gone, we know that now that Winnipeg has struck out on a few different players. I'm not saying that Pacioretty will end up in Winnipeg. I don't want to get radioed on that. Like, just saying there are teams out there with a lot of incentive to add this type of player, and I think Marc Bergevin is going to get a lot closer to the price he's willing to accept for him as we move towards 3 p.m. Monday. And as far as I know, there are as many as 4 teams kicking tires on Pacioretty and trying to work something out that they could add him. One of them is, as reported by Nick Kyprios and Elliot Friedman, the Los Angeles Kings, and I believe that's a very real possibility right now. Another is the Florida Panthers, and I can't really assuredly put out the other names of teams that are potentially looking at Pacioretty, but there is a marketplace for him, and I really do believe that between now and 3 p.m. Monday, and I've been wrong before, but I'm willing to stake it and say that I think the chances are stronger that he's gone than they are that he'll be staying.
So, just a couple things there. So you said the Panthers, and my response was, what? But I forgot something that I did just last night. I looked at the standings. Now, as Leaf fans, I think, have a distorted view of the standings because we're kind of just looking up at Tampa and Boston now. Well, looking down at Boston for the time being. I don't know how long that's going to last. But the Panthers, I think, have played the fewest games in the NHL. They're actually only, I think, 4 or 5 points back of the wild card spot. And they're one of the hottest teams in contention for the wild card spot. So, man, if they go for Pacioretty, that's a ballsy move. I don't know if it pushes them over the top.
Well, let's just put it this way. If Max Pacioretty was asked, like Thomas Turtleneck was, and Max Pacioretty has no trade protection, if he was asked by Marc Bergevin, I'm not saying that he was, but if he was, the number one team he would say he would want to go to is the Florida Panthers.
Money.
And beyond that fact is the Florida Panthers, Max Pacioretty's under contract through next season, and the Panthers have a rich prospect pool, and they could use a player like him who's at $4.5 million a season between now and 2019 to add to what they've got. And I see a big incentive for Dale Talon to potentially purchase there. And I can't help but feel that if Marc Bergevin is taking the same approach with Pacioretty as he has with Plekanec, and I'm not saying that I know that he has, but I think it's possible that he has, then yes, the Florida Panthers make a lot of sense. And considering I've heard that they're one of the teams in on him, it wouldn't surprise me.
And to what you said about the Pacioretty going to potentially Winnipeg. So we already know Hoffman said no, which you alluded to. And then last night, what they said, I think during headlines, was everyone's kind of waiting for Rick Nash to move. Well, he moved. And then after that, the runner-up was supposed to be Evander Kane. Which,
we know Winnipeg's not trading for him.
Yeah. So I could see. I know Florida's got a good system, and maybe you could get something out of them. But what team is more likely to overpay than Winnipeg at this point?
I can see it too, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. I can't say with any knowledge that Winnipeg is interested in Max Pacioretty, but you have to think with Hoffman having said no that they are in on that player. And like I said, I don't have intel on that, so I can't say for sure. But if I was Kevin Cheveldayoff, there wouldn't be a player I'd be more interested in if I was looking to add a scoring winger than Max Pacioretty, especially given what they have. Because you look at Pacioretty's history, he's had issues, obviously, in the playoffs, but, he's had virtually no help in Montreal to get things done. But in Winnipeg, he doesn't have to be the guy. There's Blake Wheeler, there's Mark Scheifele, there's Nick Ehlers, there's Patrick Laine. To add Pacioretty to that picture.
Laine was the fourth guy you mentioned.
That's crazy.
I put them up against Tampa offensively, Like, that's insane.
At the beginning of the year, we're all in hockey pools. At the beginning of the year, my entire hockey pool strategy was I'm picking players only from Winnipeg, Tampa, and Toronto as high-octane offensive players. And it's done very well for me, let's put it that way.
Blake, my wife has Blake Wheeler in a hockey pool, and guess what? Blake Wheeler is paying for our fridge to be fixed. So I would like to personally thank him.
I've got him and Scheifele, so it's working out well, and I've got Matthews, and I traded for Crosby. I traded Braden Point and Vlad Nemesnikov for Crosby, which was the steal of this year.
Oh, you stole him. Wow.
I can't believe Eric Engels just reported that Braden Point and Vlad Nemesnikov are getting traded for a Sidney Crosby. That's very cool. Get a Google alert.
Yeah,
I did it, knowing that Sid is, in the second half is a whole different player. And
it's always
so frustrating.
It worked out well.
Eric,
so
I got to ask you, just because of your pool acumen and also your Montreal Canadiens acumen. You obviously, the big move today was not the Leafs in Montreal. It was Boston and the Rangers. Rick Nash goes one way. Everybody else goes the other. What did you think of the haul? The haul, as in not Taylor Hall, but the return on Rick Nash. And will what Pacioretty brings come anywhere close to that? Because, Max Pacioretty, for the struggles he's had this year, is probably a better player, projects to have more points. And I don't see any reason why he wouldn't rebound next year. You get him for another year. Like, is that it? Are we talking a pretty, like, are the prices comparable? Is it more? Is it less? What do you think?
Got to be more.
Yeah, I'll start with the Pacioretty angle of it. I think the Canadiens, in an ideal world, get a first-round pick, a center, NHL-ready top center prospect, and potentially another prospect or a roster player. That's ideal. I think that would equate to what Rick Nash brought in, but probably be a better deal, better quality pieces involved. So, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare the two because one is a UFA and the other has one more year on one of the best contracts in the NHL, and everybody knows the second he leaves Montreal, he's going to explode, which is not as much of a guarantee with Rick Nash in Boston. That said, I'm probably against the grain on this. I love this deal for Boston. I love this deal for Boston.
No kidding.
I love what it means for the Bruins in the room, who have proven to be not only a much better team than anybody thought they'd be, but in my view, potentially the best team in the NHL. And that comes down to the way they play, the way they act as a team, and that top line and the top heavy elements there. And what turns them into that much better of a team is the fact that they were top heavy and they added a piece like Rick Nash to play underneath those guys. And that's, you could talk about Nash's point production in New York, which is a waffling team, or you could also talk about the fact that he's one of the best two-way forwards in the game, something which he rarely gets credit for, his defensive side of the game. So I think it's a great move for Boston, and it's going to reinforce a lot of goodwill in that room. They're going to feel really good about the fact that Don Sweeney swung for the fences and made that move.
No, but Spooner going the other way, along with Lindgren and the picks, and obviously Matt Bolesky, but that was a bit of a salary, 50% retention dump.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, well, Spooner's on pace for more points, and he's 26 years old, and he's less expensive. Is there any argument to the fact that there's no question he probably wouldn't have fit into the lineup had they kept him, but is Spooner a comparable player, and did they just give up a comparable player for a guy with a great reputation? Or is it that genuinely, like, Rick Nash is going to change the way the second and third lines on this team play?
I think Ryan Spooner has everything to do with cap implications and what
Fair.
the Bruins had to do to get this deal done. I'm not taking anything away from Ryan Spooner, who's clearly a very talented player, but the Boston Bruins are looking at this situation as, how are we going to win the Stanley Cup? And does this make us a better team and give us a better chance of winning the Stanley Cup? And with Nash's playoff experience, even though some of it has been not excellent, let's put it that way, the Bruins have to believe they have a better chance of winning the Stanley Cup today than they did yesterday when they had Ryan Spooner and Matt Bolesky buried in the minors and their first-round pick. So, I don't know. If I were in Don Sweeney's shoes in that management group's place, I'd make that deal every day. So,
all right,
that's just me. I've seen a lot of the reaction out there. Like, I know a lot of people think they gave up too much to make this deal happen. I just happen to believe that that's the nature of the deadline. That's the nature of the salary cap. And they targeted a player that they wanted, that they believe makes them better and gives them a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And they have every reason to be excited about it, because I think they absolutely achieved that objective.
There is another team in the Atlantic Division that we've flirted talking with, but let's dive in. What the hell are the Sens doing?
The real question to me is, what is Gary Bettman doing about Eugene Melnyk? And
Oh, wow. Good point.
Great answer.
And it's a question because LeBreton Flats looks like it's going to happen. That the Senators are going to get a downtown arena, and it's going to happen sometime in the near future. And heaven forbid they have an owner who's not willing to spend anything to put a product on the ice there, because they are going from a situation where attendance is terrible to only getting worse with every player and their mother being traded out of town. And, the reality of them exploring trading Erik Karlsson has as much to do with the fact that they may not want to pay him as it does with Erik Karlsson not wanting to stick around for what's going on there. And I just think it's a toxic situation with a guy who, everything he has said and done in the last year is like communications 101 of what not to do.
He's Mr. Burns.
With your fan base. I wouldn't even give him that. He's not that cunning and conniving. Brilliant. He's really,
ham-handed.
I don't even know what the words are I would use to describe it, but all I could say is, if I were Gary Bettman, I'd be looking nonstop for somebody who can buy this team, and I would be voting him out and getting him out of there and getting him his money and trying to build some sort of semblance to the future in Ottawa. Because if they can't do that, they're going to have to start looking at, about 200 kilometers east on the 40 and the 407 and get that team over to Quebec, where it'll be treated properly and where there's a beautiful building waiting and owners willing to take it and turn it into a team that's worth watching. Because what's going on there right now, to me, is a real shame. And I think there's a serious threat to viability in hockey in Ottawa with this guy at the helm of the team.
Can you vote someone out of ownership in the NHL? Because I know you can do that in the NBA, but like you mentioned something like how do you
you're asking me for the technicalities after I said that? Oh, man.
Can you how do you force Eugene Melnyk out? Unless you make him just a big fat offer.
Yeah, find the guy who's willing to pay him. That's the way. But at the end of the day, there's no way that he's happy. There's no way the Board of Governors are happy. And it's a toxic, bad situation that reflects horribly on Melnyk and just as badly on the NHL for allowing something like this to happen. And the irony in the whole situation is, here's Pierre Dorion with a contract extension sitting there, about to make a move that will forever mark his name as a general manager in this league. And at the same time, he could completely remake the Senators in a really good way in making that deal. But as we all know, and as history has proven so many times over and over again, regardless of the sport, when you give up the best player in the deal, it's hard to say that you're winning it. And the only other circumstances where that has happened really was the Eric Lindros trade. And
that was recent.
And even so, we may not be saying that. We may not be saying that about the Eric Lindros trade if Patrick Roy was never traded to the Colorado Avalanche in 1995, because they may have never won without him, for as great of a team as they had. You look at the competition they had with the Red Wings, and that's how much it took for that to happen. But yeah, I mean, if you had asked me now in retrospect if I would have traded Eric Lindros 1-for-1 for Peter Forsberg, never mind the 100 other assets they got in that deal that were incredible players, I would have done it. I love Peter Forsberg as my favorite player of all time, and I think in the end he was a better player than Eric Lindros. Though I know that's one of a few things I've said in the last 15 minutes or so that many people would disagree with.
I mean, hey man, Lindros was an absolute phenom, but I still tell people Peter Forsberg in his prime is still one of the best players I've ever seen live. He's so
Peter
dominant.
Forsberg, the thing I love, like when I grew up as a fan of the game, the thing that I loved most about players was seeing them do things that nobody had done before them. And that's why I believe, when I saw Carey Price at his very best, I truly believe he's the best goaltender I've ever seen. Numbers be damned, because they'll never match up with what some of the other guys in the game have done. But when I watch him and what he does, I see something that I've never seen from anybody else. When I watch Sidney Crosby play up against the greatest players of all time, and Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky and Bobby Orr and all those guys, just like them before him, he does things that I've never seen anybody do, and that for me makes him the best, like literally the best player I've ever seen. And I felt that way about Peter Forsberg watching him play, because I had never seen a player hit other players while he had the puck. I had never seen a player
about to say that.
who could throw a pass the way he could, blind and outside of Gretzky, the best passer I've ever seen in my life. And there's a prototypical play in Peter Forsberg's career that for me sums up exactly who he was as a player and why nobody was like him before he came into action. And it's a playoff game between the Minnesota Wild and the Colorado Avalanche. And Forsberg, I can't tell you what year it was, there's a puck sitting on the center ice line, and Forsberg is skating across the line, and Wes Walz is skating from blue line to red line. And they're skating, trying to get to this loose puck, and Forsberg gets to it a split second before Walz. He's a left-handed shot who corrals the puck with his top hand and lowers his shoulder into Walz and absolutely pancakes him.
And Walz was a small guy too.
No, he wasn't. And he turns around.
Wasn't he?
Forsberg, was he a small guy? Wes Walz? I don't know. I'd have to check the stats.
Anyway, sorry. I'm interrupting your amazing story.
What a
surprise. I know, what a surprise. Sorry, go ahead.
He pancakes Walz, like flat on his back, like one of the hardest hits you will ever see. He pivots, turns, throws a breakaway pass to Milan Hajduk, who scores. And it was just, that was Peter Forsberg. Like that play, nobody else in the world would do that. It was just, those are the players I always had the most appreciation for. And I think, a guy who never scored more than 30 goals in a season was one of the best players I've ever seen.
I gotta follow up on this. I gotta bring it back to Ottawa for just a second, Eric. And I'm so sorry to do this, because that was.
Why sorry?
You're bringing me. Well, I mean, because the Forsberg talk is so great.
Well,
I just
Wes Walz. I have 5'10", 180. Sorry.
Okay, you win, Dangle. You win.
It's very important to him, Eric. It's very important.
He's fast, all right? Pack the punch.
Okay, what? Yeah. You talked a little bit about the poison atmosphere in Ottawa, because for me, this very day 9 months ago, Ottawa lost in double overtime to Pittsburgh. It's 9 months ago today it happened. So 9 months ago, we're talking about a team that's a goal away from the Stanley Cup Finals. Now we're here. And I want to talk a little bit about that culture that people keep referencing. You guys are, you as reporters, it's like I say this to CJ all the time. I'm like, I wish you would say 10 minutes on whatever it is you just said. And I want to talk about this culture because from what we've heard, there was some sort of incident where Pierre Dorion went into the Ottawa Senators dressing room, and I wanted to know if you know anything about this. Yeah. And they refused to turn down the music to talk to him or something like that. And that's where this is some of this has come from. Have you heard anything about that?
No, and I don't buy into those things. I even saw some crazy tweet from some nobody who has quoted no sources whatsoever. And it's not attached. It's not attached to any media outlet or anything like that. And literally had respected people that I respect in the media responding to him as if like what he was saying was the gospel.
I retweeted and said, "Wait a second, is this true?"
His own $350 Uber. Anyways, for me, look at the Kyle Turris scenario. How many players in Ottawa do you think were happy with the fact that Kyle Turris ended up traded off that team and that he wouldn't be paid to stay and that things went the way they did with the reports coming out that, they wouldn't offer him the term that he was after and he wouldn't sign for the term? All things considered, nobody was happy in Ottawa about the fact that he was moving. He was a huge part of that team. The players loved him. That was really tough for Matt Duchene coming into that atmosphere, knowing how disappointed everybody was. But that was kind of like the last straw in a series of things that have happened in Ottawa that have made for a sour situation there. And yeah, you talk about where they were last year. They were obviously riding the inspiration of what happened with Craig Anderson and his wife Nicole, which was very unfortunate and terrible, but also galvanized their team and brought them together. And that's an important thing in sports that we often ignore and we just dismiss as, intangible and it doesn't matter and you can't measure it. It does matter. Teams that come together have a good chance of winning. I look at Boston in 2011, and I remember walking into their room in the middle of the season and looking around and seeing the atmosphere in there and talking to the players and walking out of their room and saying, this team is going to win the Stanley Cup. Like, they would die for each other. And I had never quite seen an atmosphere like that in any other room that I had walked into. And I had walked into all 30 up until this year becoming 31 for 11 years now. So sometimes you see something, you recognize it, and you know what it is. And there was an element of that in Ottawa last year and what they were able to do and how they were able to rally. But, there's a number of elements from mostly emanating from the top and ownership to, in my opinion, the way Guy Boucher coaches the team, to players being lost that were key members of the team, to the direction they're taking, to Karlsson's potential availability because of what he might command on the market. I mean, there's enough reasons that add up to that toxicity that we're referring to. And that's as far as I can go, as far as my knowledge takes me. The rest is just my opinion, and that's why maybe someone like me or someone like CJ or anybody else who's a lot more respected than me would be shy to specifically reference things they've heard of, and that goes to establishing trust with the people that tell you things that they expect you to keep to yourself. And believe me, I always try and share what I know and what I can share, but there's plenty of stuff that I can't put on the record because I'm sworn to secrecy about it, and I respect the people that tell me, and I'm happy to earn their trust and keep it.
Tell us everything. Break the trust. Hey, to bring this full circle, so we were talking shortly before we called. Reichel and Valiev, is there any shot they get in the Habs lineup?
For sure. I mean, if they're here beyond tomorrow, which I expect they will be, they're in Laval for now. I don't know how many roster spots end up freed up. I think, Valiev will have a good chance to get a look up in Montreal. That, to me, seems like a no-brainer. You can have as many players up with the team post-deadline as you want to have. So that's another factor. I think, right now in Laval, they're far out of the playoff picture, but they have a chance to make a run if those two players can help them do it. And potentially the Canadiens will want them to do that, and maybe a couple more off their roster. Period. So there's every reason to believe they're going to get a look at some point in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And there's also reason to believe, though, that they weren't, among the top 10 prospects in what I would refer to as one of the richest prospect pools in the NHL in Toronto. There's reason to believe that they have NHL potential, both of those players. Yep. And, I spoke to Warren Reichel this morning, who's Kirby's father, just briefly, and said, this is a great opportunity for your son, and he agrees. And as far as what I know about Valiev, I think, there's some sentiment around the league that he's a player that could play in the NHL down the line. And I think, with all the guys that were ahead of him, be it, Borgman or Dermott, and I think, he wasn't going to get that chance in Toronto, but he certainly gets it in Montreal. So, again, that's part of the reason why this is a good deal for Montreal.
Early in the season and at times last season, whenever asked about guys in the Marlies, Babcock frequently brought up Valiev as a guy he liked. So I don't know. I mean, you got to give up something to get something, I think is the saying, and I wasn't surprised to see Montreal ask for him.
It's great when it can work out that way, that Montreal ends up with those types of players that, even though they're not at the top of the list for Toronto, they could still have an NHL future. And it's also great for Toronto to be able to move two prospects out of their pool that don't affect the overall picture of what they're building towards in the future, and the guys that they have stock in and they believe in. So I mean, it's I think more and more, which it really wasn't the case going back over the last number of years, but certainly over the last 2-3 years, we're seeing more and more deals in the NHL that really work for both teams.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's, the cap has its negatives. It seems as though Ottawa can't make a deal without getting 3 teams involved. But the positives are that there's been more equitable trade because teams are so careful about what they're giving up in terms of futures. Mm-hmm. Because the NHL is graduating more 18 and 19-year-olds than it ever has before. It's that type of game. You go back 5 years with a dramatic change, which people really ignored, was the elimination of the middle class, and those 30-year-old players who would have served as third-line players all over the NHL ended up on PTOs. Like Thomas Fleischmann coming to Montreal a couple years ago on a PTO, a guy that had been a consistent, somewhat of a 20-goal scorer, and the minute he hit 30, it was like that was it. The money isn't there for those guys to sign those 4-year deals worth $5 million a year anymore. And that elimination process has led to all these young players coming into the league and being trusted. And I think it took a few outliers to prove that if you give those players a chance early on in their careers and give them reasonable opportunity to play in specific situations, they'll prove to you that they can do good things. And I know this is topical, especially speaking of 3 guys in Toronto right now, with all the controversy over what Babcock does with his roster on a nightly basis. And it's just the same here in Montreal with Claude Julien. I wouldn't call him a Babcock disciple, but the two of them certainly see eye to eye on a lot of things. I still see both rosters here putting young players in positions to succeed and relying on more of them than they ever would have in the past, regardless of how slow that process looks to be at times.
Well, damn, Eric.
Yeah.
Before the conversation started, you're like, you can have me for an hour, and we laughed about it, and then I think that's what we did. So I really appreciate you coming on, man, especially on short notice.
Yeah, and deadline within 24 hours of the deadline, which is crazy.
Well, you caught me in a good window. The Canadiens already made one trade, and we'll wait on the other ones, and none of them have happened while we were on the phone. So
I think there might be more today.
Timing.
Where can we read all your stuff,
possibly.
Eric?
Yeah, look forward to it. The Play Canada's piece should be up on Sportsnet now that we've been on the phone for a while. And, it'll give Leafs fans a really good perspective on what they're getting, and Canadiens fans a really good perspective on why Marc Bergevin made this a better deal than what it could have been.
It's entitled "Cooperation with Plekanec Could Make Canadiens Trade Even Better,"
and I believe it is the top item on Sportsnet.ca right now. Mm-hmm. Not so bad,
good
sir.
Stuff.
All right. Hey, so thank you so much, Eric Engels. Sportsnet.ca. Make sure you check out the column. Make sure you follow him at Eric Engels on Twitter. And Eric, we might be bugging you again in a couple days after Montreal trades everybody else.
I hope you will. I like talking to you guys.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate the time.
Feeling is mutual.
All right, take care.
Steve?
Yeah, so I wanted to start with a couple things just feeding off that conversation. So Kyle Bond, who hasn't had the most fantastic season, but he's going to be joining the Marlies. He's actually the grandson of Bobby Bond.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, Leafs legend.
So we should break his leg too.
Yeah, and he'll play even better. Yeah, Bobby Bond broke his leg in Game 6 of the 1964 Stanley Cup Final, scored the overtime winner on a broken leg, and then the Leafs went on to win Game 7 against the Detroit Red Wings and win the Stanley Cup. The other one, from their last game, I think it was. Here's the Toronto Marlies lineup, okay? Andreas Johnson, Miro Aaltonen, Dmytro Timashov. That's your top line. Second line, Trevor Moore, I think it's Chris Mueller, and Ben Smith, who's the Marlies captain and I think leading scorer. Mm-hmm. Kirby Reichel, Freddie Gauthier, Colin Greening, Mason Marchment, Adam Brooks, Jeremy Bracco on fourth line there. Their defense, Borgman and Marincin, Rosen and Loverty, Nielsen and Liljegren. So
Valiev wasn't even playing. But in the AHL you play 3-3s, so maybe it was just his night off. Hall wasn't in the lineup either. I think he might be hurt. He got pucked to the face about a week ago.
Aaltonen scored an amazing highlight reel goal and then was knocked out by a questionable play by former Leaf Seth Griffith. So anyway, Reichel comes out of the lineup at third line left wing on the Marlies, and Valiev wasn't even in the lineup there. And look at that again. Borgman, Marincin, Rosen, Loverty, Nielsen, Liljegren. The Leafs have Valiev replacements. The Leafs have Reichel replacements. Martins Jerkals is in the minors, or in the ECHL, the minors of the minors right now. They could call him up and plug him in there. I think they got a couple other prospects.
There's one thing you can't replace. And that's a second round pick that you give away.
That is difficult, right? That is difficult. But the argument might be they already have so many players. And you get a guy like Janssen, in the 7th round, and it makes you able to spend a second round pick with some security. I don't, God, if the Habs just nail it with that second round pick,
next PK,
it's going to hurt.
The Leafs also have, I think it's 7 players who are 31 and over, and now 4 guys who are 35 and over. Does that concern you for the playoffs?
No.
That everybody's so old?
No, because, that changes very quickly, as we've seen. And also, look at the role the guys are playing. Matthews, Nylander, I think, is Hyman 25 yet? He might have just turned 25, 24 or 25. Marner, Kapanen is getting a bigger role. Janssen is going to be on this team next year unless there's a trade.
I'm 25.
Yeah, Liljegren is going to make the team at some point. So, there are some older guys in the lineup, but the biggest impact guys are still the young ones, if you will. There are still trades we haven't even gotten to.
Well, and that's the thing. So,
and this is our pre-deadline show.
Yeah.
This isn't even the post-deadline show.
So the next thing, obviously, and we spoke about it a little bit with Eric Engels, is the Rick Nash trade. And so again, the Bruins get Rick Nash and Matt Bolesky's half contract.
Sorry, one more thing from Lance Hornby. Plekanec wore number 14 with the Habs. That will have to change unless Dave Keon is in a really good mood because his number is retired.
Right.
Interesting.
The Bruins, I don't... That's cool, man.
I thought I was contributing.
Bruins get half of Matt Bolesky's contract with Matt Bolesky, the guy. They get Rick Nash. They get rid of Bolesky. What am I saying? Bruins get Rick Nash. Rangers get a first, a 7th next year, Matt Bolesky, Ryan Spooner, Ryan Lindgren.
That's weird to me. No, I need a 7th in there, or else forget it.
That is funny, isn't it? The 7th just is in there. And
I wonder how that conversation starts. Does one GM go, and I need a 7th? The other guy goes, don't be a dick. The other GM responds, you don't be a dick. It's a 7th. Were you scared? I wonder how childish it gets.
I wonder. Here's the one thing about Rick Nash, and I didn't bring this up with Eric because we were running out of time, but Rick Nash has 15 goals in 77 career playoff games.
Wow. Really?
If you remember, when the Rangers went to the finals 2 or 3 years ago, one of the things that people kept talking about was Rick Nash not scoring.
I do remember that.
And I'm not saying Boston's not a better team. I don't know that they are or they're not. Eric seemed pretty convinced that they were. And this for sure, I think it'd be a huge mental boost. But I wonder, and I brought up the word reputation, and I feel like we see this more and more recently, where we've seen it more and more recently, where people are traded based on reputation rather than the results of this particular season. For instance, Rick Nash apparently is, what is he on they're saying he's on a 38-point pace this year.
It's pretty bad.
Spooner was on a 53-point pace.
It's not all about points.
Sure.
I'm sure some people are
But my question with Rick Nash is Rick Nash still worth that much? What is it more than just the points that he's putting up? Fine, maybe it is. But I have a hard time with, if I'm paying that, I would like Max Pacioretty. That's what I would like for that amount of money.
Poor Spooner. He's done a lot of bouncing around in his career.
This is the first year of his big contract.
Traded in junior, bouncing between the AHL and the NHL, finally sort of gets established, gets traded to the Rangers. I heard he's strange. Not a jerk, just strange. I wonder if he strained with his teammates in Boston at all. I don't know. I mean, he's a good player.
Apparently he was buried, so I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Back to Adam's point. Friedman wrote in, I think, the most recent 31 Thoughts that players want to be like rewarded for playing well. And I think this is more of that case. The Boston management is like, okay, you guys have outpaced so much of expectations going this season. Nobody thought Boston was going to be in this position.
No, you're right.
And look how well they played. And the players want to be like, okay, hey, we did our job. Now you go out and help us. And I think bringing in a guy like Rick Nash is more mental than it is on-ice performance, because they're like, hey, we did this great job. We got into the second place in the conference. Here's Rick Nash for you guys. Go out and win. I think that mentally will help Boston more than it will bringing in a guy who's going to score goals.
And to your point, a lot of Bruins fans I saw reacting to this, they seem to think Nash is likely to play with David Krejci, who has been a bit of a miracle worker. Like whoever is on his wing kind of turns to gold. He's really good at taking bigger forwards, kind of power forwards, and making them good. I wonder how much, this is stupid, this is so dumb, I might as well just have it tumble out of my head anyway. How much did last night's game against the Bruins...
Dude, whenever you preface something, you should always say, hey, this is going to be dumb.
It's going to be dumb. How much did last night's game change anything? Did it change anything? Because the Leafs ran the Bruins show for quite a chunk of that game. And I was shocked.
But the Bruins also almost won.
So? They almost won, but teams... I think all of Tampa, Boston, and Toronto want to win the Atlantic Division, but I think what they're much more concerned about is how they play down the stretch. They all know they're getting in. How
they play each other matters.
It matters. They want to look good in the games they play, and against the Leafs especially, that game was ripe for the taking. For crying out loud, the Leafs didn't have Matthews. That's the second time, I believe, that the Leafs have beaten the Bruins this season without Matthews in the lineup. I was at the first one. Marlowe scored the OT winner. Now, the Bruins were a lot more banged up there. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, Bergeron also left this game in a walking boot.
Now, apparently that's not all that bad. Yeah. That was precautionary, and it's not that bad. Yeah. He'll be back.
All right. Okay, well, that's fine. The Atlantic is an all-out arms race. This ain't a scene. It's a goddamn arms race.
Somebody asked me once that Rick Nash deal happened, and this is before Plekanec was dealt to the Leafs. They said, how do you think the Leafs in Tampa Bay will react to this? And I don't think they react to this. The Leafs in Tampa are not going to make reactive. These are not reactive. Steve Yzerman and Lou Lamoriello are not reactive general managers. They're active general managers. They have their, and as you heard Eric say, the Leafs have been in on Plekanec for 3 or 4 weeks at least. So they're going to make their moves. Boston's going to make their moves, but I don't think that any of those teams are going to just react to each other. Oh, well, they got Rick Nash, or they got Ryan McDonagh, or they got Erik Karlsson, or whatever it is. We have to go do something. I don't think that's what any general manager is going to do. And if you look at these 3 teams, there is no reason why a general manager couldn't just be confident in what they have. Of all the teams lined up, I think the Leafs have the biggest hole on defense, but it's not as though Tampa is without. They have some weaknesses too. As they have less of them.
Well, and Sergachev has put up a ton of points this season, but he's not marvelous in his own end. Mm-hmm. Holy crap, Karlsson. That'd be incredible. And also for the trade deadline coverage, if Karlsson gets traded tomorrow, it's like any good UFC fight card. No one remembers the undercard as long as the main event delivers.
Yep.
The night there was a fight card in Australia. The first 4 fights were farts. 5th fight, Holly Holm kicks Ronda Rousey in the head. Huge upset, wins the women's title. That's what I remember from that night.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't leave disappointed. As long as the big fish happens, I think we have a very successful deadline and won't be boring television at all. And also, all these trades that are happening today, even though it's not on deadline day, they just happened. We're less than 24 hours out now.
Yeah.
Actually, I think literally, at the time we're recording this, it's just coming up on 3 o'clock.
Rick Nash, to me, is still a reputation trade. I think
I don't love it.
Evander Kane has more points. Max Pacioretty is a better player. Are they going to fetch much more? Is Evander Kane going to even fetch close to as much?
Let's say Nash is better than Spooner, all right? So let's say that. It is handy to get Bolesky's cap hit off, I suppose. That's a marginal improvement to that lineup for a heavy price. I don't know how much I love that.
Unless and you know what? Now that we're talking about it, he'll probably set the world on fire and go on a crazy streak and end up with 50 goals.
Oh, dude, if he turns back the clock and he's Nash of 4 or 5 years ago, great.
Should we also mention that Boston picked up Giunta?
Hey, that's okay. So, some people are just evil, terrible people. And so I'd like to call out Andrew Berkshire for sending me a text that the Boston Bruins signed Brian Giunta just so he could brain Frederik Andersen in the playoffs, just like he did to James Reimer. Some people just aren't good people.
I respect him for remembering that. That's amazing.
I don't. I disrespect him always.
Rick Nash's 42-goal season was in 14-15, by the way. So it wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And 23 goals in 67 games. Not last season, but year before.
I mean, it's...
Oh, no. That was last season. 23 goals last season. So not bad. 67 games.
Yeah, so I think I don't know, everyone's talking about his 38-point pace. Let's be honest, guys. He's probably better than that. Mm-hmm. How much better is the question, right? Mm-hmm. It's very interesting for the Bruins. Very, very interesting. And then there's this 3-way deal. We were just sort of talking about this before
there was
the
another
show.
trade.
Yeah, there was another trade. So it's amazing. All these GMs, they make like millions of dollars. They had careers as NHL players. A lot of them have been executives for years. Some of them 10 plus, even before they became general managers. And really, it's just a copycat league. Hey, Patrick Waugh, who just got here as a head coach, started pulling his goalie early. Let's try that. And now everyone does it. Hey, no one does 3-way trades. No one's done it for like a decade and a half, 15 years. One team does a 3-way deal. Hey, you know what?
3-way deal.
Let's do 3 or 4 of them in like a 3-month span.
I can't wait till restricted free agents start getting offer sheets. It's going to be fun.
Dude, who knows? It might become the trend.
One of these days, it's going to happen.
Might become the trend. There's more and more people getting into NHL front offices that show you the information, the cost, if you pay this pick, that pick, that pick, who say it's actually worth it for certain guys. What are the odds that anyone you draft turns out to be Leon Draisaitl, for example? Or David Pastrnak was another guy who was vulnerable for a long time.
Pretty rare. And you're talking about 3-way trades. The Edmonton Oilers traded Mark Letestu to the Preds for Pontus Aberg. Nashville then traded Letestu to the Blue Jackets for a 4th-round pick.
The Blue Jackets is 4th round.
Blue Jackets 4th. So Nashville ends up with the 4th rounder. Edmonton ends up with Aberg, and the Blue Jackets end up with Letestu.
Sorry, one more time. What did the Preds get?
We went over this 3 times in the car.
I know,
and
I
like,
still
good,
didn't get
got it.
I know, man, I don't anymore.
The Preds have a 4th-round pick in this.
And that's it.
Yeah, I don't know why they needed to be a part of it. Why didn't you just trade,
because Aberg was a 2nd-round pick. I thought he was decent.
Well, they put a lot of, I think, unfair expectations going on to him in this year. And then, anyway, Aberg's now with the Oilers.
I don't understand that. Yeah. That's why I heard you. I heard you the first time. I just don't understand why they did it.
Yeah, and he's had a rough year, but maybe he's some of the speed they're looking for on the wing.
Speaking of don't understand why they did it, we haven't even gotten to Brassard.
No, we'll get there. We're getting there.
Okay.
We're moving. I do want to talk about the Ottawa Senators because, again, the Ottawa Senators in double overtime lost May 25th, 2017. That is exactly 9 months ago today at the recording of this podcast. And by the way, by the time you listen to this podcast, it'll probably be completely out of date anyway.
You know how many babies were born in Pittsburgh today?
That's a good point. What's mind-blowing to me, and it all seems to stem from the tourist situation. The tourist trade kicked off a bunch of bad stuff in Ottawa.
It does seem like the day the Sens died.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ottawa won the Matt Duchene sweepstakes and has fallen off a cliff. And it's crazy because you got to think about who's leaving already. You get Turris, Brassard, and Phaneuf already gone. More on the way, probably. Hoffman could have been gone if he wanted to go to Winnipeg. And by the way, I have no idea why he wouldn't want to go to Winnipeg.
That's dumb. Yeah, no.
That's a dumb move. You want to stay with the Senators, man?
I like what Fried said about that.
You're nuts. You're nuts.
Man, you only get so many chances at this. You don't need to live there all the time. You're going to be on the road half the time. What's Canada that awesome? Come on, man.
Yeah, really.
Get out of town, win a cup.
So Brassard,
you'd be part of probably the best offense in the NHL.
Yeah. And how much is that just going to beef your stats up? Look at Patrick Maroon. What was Patrick Maroon before he was playing with Connor McDavid?
A third-round pick. That's how the Oilers got him. That's the best move that they've made in a long time. Oh, boy.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't understand the thinking there. And now, I'd love to know where he ends up. And I'd love to know how they do and where he could have been instead. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting.
Where do you think Ian Cole ends up?
The team he goes to ends up beating
Ian Cole has not even left Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because they don't want to do the immigration paperwork, so they're not bringing him to Canada.
You just stay there, we'll flip you.
Yeah.
I think we got that to expect.
If Nick Holden gets you a third, then Ian Cole's got to be a third.
Mm-hmm. At least.
Has to be.
Ottawa has one pick in the first 3 rounds, and that's Pittsburgh's first round pick.
What?
Because they trade away their third in the Brassard deal. So they don't have a third round pick. They don't have a second round pick, which is traded away in July of 2018
But they got a sliding pick. They could get the pick this year that they've traded in the Duchene deal.
Yes.
Oh.
So they might have 2 first rounders.
Oh, that's so bad. Oh, also, sorry, I was doing some research earlier today.
But yeah, Ian Cole.
Going back to the Rick Nash trade, there's something I forgot. So the Bruins gave up a lot in terms of picks and a little bit in prospects. What?
Where are we going?
Where are we going?
What?
Is this relating to Ottawa?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. Because back to the Rick Nash deal.
No, it does relate.
It does
relate. So Ottawa doesn't have many picks coming right now. But one thing that's going on in the Atlantic Division right now, the Marlies are first place and they're on a record-breaking pace. Belleville, well out of the playoffs. Laval, well out of the playoffs. So those are 2 teams within the Atlantic who are rebuilding and don't have much in the cupboard. So they're kind of at base level there. Boston gave up a lot, but in the past 3 drafts, they've had 6 first-round picks and 11 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Wow.
I don't think they're sweating the first-round pick too much. And out of those first-round picks from the last 3 drafts, one is David Pastrnak. Mm-hmm. And another's Charlie McAvoy.
And then there was 3 together.
Yeah.
12, 13, 14.
One of whom was DeBrusk, who scored against the Leafs last night. And I think that was his 12th goal of the season as a rookie. So, Boston is...
They're fine.
They're in as good of a position as any team in the NHL. They're a great combination of experienced and expensive and young and cheap.
Yep.
And Bergeron's on a sweet deal too. So.
Derek Brassard, that deal was very, very interesting because it was so complicated. And Jim Rutherford sat down and said, "This is the most complicated deal I've ever done." To me, the most interesting thing about the Brassard deal was Don Cherry being so upset about Ryan Reeves leaving Pittsburgh. That was my favorite.
And Crosby too.
Did you see Coach's Corner last night?
I did not. I was just getting home.
He said he was talking about what Mathot. And I encourage you to go on sportsnet.ca and watch it. He was talking about what Mathot did to Crosby and that Ryan Reeves there, Crosby's played every game this year because Ryan Reeves is there. And then he shows a clip of Austin Matthews getting hit sandwiched between 2 Islanders and hurting his shoulder and going, "You think that hit happens if Matt Martin's there?" Yeah,
Yeah,
the hit still
I do.
happens if Matt
No,
Martin's there.
How many shifts?
It's a hockey hit.
Stop.
No, you guys are making a lot of assumptions. I think Matt Martin would have protected Matthews.
I just keep thinking back to The Simpsons. In Lisa, I would like to buy your tiger repelling rock.
Ryan Reeves is interesting. What's more interesting is that Vegas would take him. Like, why did Vegas need Ryan Reeves?
Supposedly George McPhee likes him.
Okay, because a lot of people were going, well, it's payback for the second round pick they
It
randomly
absolutely
got.
is. It absolutely is, 100%.
It's
Yeah, why would you do that?
wait, how was it payback?
Remember, we were like, why the hell did Pittsburgh give up a second round pick? George McPhee is nice and fat and happy in Vegas right now, and he's going, thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. 100%. Look at their involvement. Pull up the full trade. Look at their involvement in this trade. Why is Vegas there? Why is Vegas there?
Take
They're
some
helping
salary.
out a pal. That's it. They're paid like over $2 million for a fourth round pick. Which, yeah, I know the Leafs did that for Eric Fair, basically. But they also, I think they got a pick in exchange for Eric Fair, so that was kind of cool. And he actually played some games for the team. But Vegas is almost straight up just paying. Why is Vegas paying Derek Brassard anything? Come on. George McPhee did Jim Rutherford an enormous solid. He might be handing him the Stanley Cup this year. Or, at very least, a berth in the Stanley Cup Finals where their two teams can duke it out and the winner gets the cup and Marc-Andre Fleury.
When Ryan Reeves is the most valuable player in the playoffs, you're going to be biting your
bet.
word.
I
your
will
tongue.
bite
He's just going to pull a Claude Lemieux
I
and
will
just
eat
be
all the shorts.
incredible.
I don't mind.
So, what does everyone get?
You can read it. Go.
Sure. Pittsburgh Penguins acquire Derek Brassard, Vincent Dunn, not to be confused with super rookie Vincent Dunn and the St. Louis Blues, because I was like, what the hell? Derek Brassard, Vincent Dunn, and a third round pick in 2018.
So they ended up with a third round. They got Brassard and a third round pick from Ottawa.
Because
What?
life's not fair.
Why?
Chicago, you're off the hook.
Why did they get a third round pick?
Chicago, you're off the hook. We're mad at Pittsburgh now. Ottawa Senators acquire Philip Gustafson, who is supposedly a very good goaltending prospect. First round draft pick in 2018, which is pretty great on account of the traded one. Yep. So 31st overall. And third round pick in 2019. So that's nice. Vegas gets Ryan Reeves and a fourth round draft pick in 2018. And that also doesn't mention that they're retaining half on Derek Brassard, which carries over to next year. Now, okay, something that confused me there. So Brassard's actual money owed next season, I think, is 3.5. His cap hit is 5. So doesn't that mean they're on the hook for 2.5 against the cap next season?
Vegas?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Vegas will be so
They have a
under
lot
the
of cap room.
It doesn't really matter.
They have a lot. I think they bought a fourth round pick.
Yeah.
And I guess Ryan Reeves?
Ryan Reeves is going to do well in the playoffs. He's built for it.
Sure. Penguin, like, weren't you still one of the most bruck teams in the NHL this season? Like, you got injury, you traded to get injury repellent from St. Louis and continue to get injured. But, the protector's gone. I'll never understand hockey players, dude. I'll never understand it. I get it. And maybe there's something to it. Every single hockey player says there's something to it. There has to be something to it. But I just don't see it, my friend. And neither does the coach. You got a problem with me, you take it up with Mike Sullivan, who healthy scratched the guy. You take it up with your back-to-back Stanley Cup winning coach who scratched him. Take it up with him. You take it up with that blogging nerd, Mike Sullivan, and what he thinks about enforcers these days. Okay? I'm not crazy. What? Why are you laughing?
Tampa Bay.
Uncle Ryan Reeves on you.
Tampa Bay and the Predators, plus a couple of unnamed teams are poking around on Erik Karlsson, which I find interesting. So what I loved about Elliot Friedman, headlines, by the way, just can't miss right now, especially like last night.
Last night I tweeted, I'm like, everyone shut up.
Yeah, headlines is on.
Ron Burgundy is on times 4.
So David Poyle, who I hope this is what he's doing. He could be in there just driving up the price on Karlsson for Yzerman. He's like, I think he might just be in there driving up the price. But there are two other teams, and you got to think that one of them is Vegas.
So I got to go back to the Brassard deal. It relates, I promise.
Okay.
So one of the things there...
Are you going back to the Rick Nash deal too?
Yes, I am. No, I'm kidding. So one of the things I think Friedman... I can't remember if he talked about this on headlines or he was tweeting about it. There was a rumor that a Western team was hard in on Brassard. So part of what Vegas gets out of this deal is, because, let's pretend Vegas makes it to the Cup final and it's against Pittsburgh. The line was we'd rather play him in round 4 than 2. So what the hell does Vegas get out of this deal? Part of what they get out of
More home playoff dates.
Yep. No one else gets them. No one else in the West gets them. Too bad. So we will, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Yep.
So that's a little bit of what's going on, I think. So it's interesting to see David Poile maybe doing a little bit of meddling of his own. I think there's a lot more of that goes on in the NHL than we even know.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
You don't hear too much about trades that don't happen.
I'm not saying the Erik Karlsson deal does happen. But if it does,
I am.
It will not involve, according to Joe Smith, Lightning reporter, Yanni Gourde or Braden Point.
I heard that yesterday. There is no way the Tampa Bay Lightning give up, especially Braden Point.
That's what I'm like, Yanni Gourde, you signed as a free agent. You can replace that. Like,
I could see
Braden Point is like, I think he's center of the future there.
There's no chance. There's no chance.
Yeah.
Nemestikov, maybe, and Friedman seem to agree. There's just no way.
What will be interesting for Ottawa, and I think interesting for Montreal in this, given what Rick Nash brought in, the pressure has to be on Dorian and Bergevin, because if Pacioretty doesn't bring in what Nash does, that's not going to look good. If Karlsson doesn't bring in a lot more than what Nash and Pacioretty get, and the problem with Ottawa right now is they don't hold any of the cards. They're trading the best player, and yet they're the ones at the disadvantage. And that's what's crazy.
They put 3 guys on waivers today.
Oduya,
Jim
Burrows,
or is it Jim O'Brien and Burrows? Yeah. So the plan is simple, and this is again, it goes kind of back to what Engels was saying. This goes back to the terrifying reality of the Ottawa Senators. It's not just that they're rebuilding; they are purging.
Yeah,
because they're broke. They're broke. They're giving away assets. That's not what you do in a rebuild.
And I'm also looking at this. This is according to Travis Yost. He had a couple important tweets today. But Ottawa just wrapped up what one source calls the worst first week of ticket renewals in organization history. Payroll down-gauging is going to be a common theme.
So, we're not talking about players here. We're
talking about full-on finances.
Yeah,
sponsors might start pulling out.
We're talking about regular people in Ottawa. Ottawa residents, just regular folks losing their jobs here because this team is frickin' broke. Is the team broke or is the owner broke?
Sounds like the owner.
I guess it's both, technically.
And why not a guy if you're I doubt Oduya and Burrows get claimed. If they do, that's fine. But if you have Oduya and Burrow, if they clear, that makes them more valuable. I don't know if you need a Burrows because he's got 8 points this year and he's got another year on his deal. But a Johnny Oduya could be depth for you. You're 6'7" guy.
I think they're both just good enough I'm surprised you weren't able to get a depth pick for them, but I think they're both just good enough to get claimed on waivers, which I think is what the Sens are banking on.
So they want them to get claimed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, please. It's a fire sale. Take them. I think it's a good day to be a Belleville Sen. Because you might have a job in the NHL tomorrow. Oh, you're going to stink. You're going to get steamrolled every night. Unless you don't. It's the NHL. Weird stuff happens, but... it can't be a good time to be a member of that organization in any way, shape, or form.
You have to get rid of Bobby Ryan with Karlsson then, just to save money.
This team's boned. Bonk's Mullet, who's a great Sens follow on Twitter.
So funny.
Yeah, he was tweeting about it yesterday, and just even Leafs fans, we just don't have the heart to spitefully rip on them anymore. It's bad. It's bad.
No,
We're not talking about a team that's struggling or having an off year. We're not talking about even like a team like Colorado last year, where it was just a comedy of errors. Everything that could possibly go wrong did.
And they were just a bad hockey team as well.
Yeah, but I looked at them and didn't think they'd be as good as they are now, but I knew there was no chance of them replicating last season. What was it, 47 points, 48 points? Even if they finished last, like I knew they would finish at least 20 points up on what they had last season. We're talking about a team with what exactly? Like what hope of anything do they have right now?
Well, and that was why it was so interesting to hear Eric Engels openly say, what is Gary Bettman doing about Eugene Melnyk? Like, what a line. That's the line of the show right there.
Dude, we rip on Bettman a lot, but like, this is the sort of thing he's paid to do, and I don't envy him right now. He's got to manage all these crazy egos, and name a bigger ego in the NHL than Eugene Melnyk? There aren't many. And this guy is CEO now. Mr. Burns is running the power plant. There are so many Simpsons episodes, and Pierre Dorian is Smithers at best. And it's such a shame because, it's funny. I was reading stuff throughout the season. It sounds like Dorian is a relatively smart guy.
Oh, yeah.
And like competent managerial guy, and he worked a really long time to get here. Doesn't matter. This thing could follow him forever. Ask John Ferguson Jr. how long a reputation or a little stint like this can ruin your reputation. We were making fun of the fact that there was a report that John Ferguson Jr. is one of the prospective GMs for the future Seattle team. And everyone started laughing. Guys, this is a completely different scenario.
So here's the thing that I find interesting about the Ottawa situation.
Also, that was over 10 years ago. I'm sure he's learned a thing or two.
The name no one's talking about in trades is Matt Duchene. Why is Matt Duchene not going to be traded? Like, to me, that's like, okay, because a couple weeks ago, it was like, well, no, that's admitting defeat on the Duchene deal. I think we've admitted defeat now.
Yeah.
Good.
I think it's time. If a guy with an extra year on his deal, which he has at a pretty responsible cap hit for a guy like that, not bad. What is it, $6 million?
Yeah, something like that.
What's
$6 million.
That's fine. You get that is.
If he was a free
Is
agent,
there
he'd get
a
that.
rule that you can't trade a player that was just been traded to
No.
your team? No?
No.
No,
Okay.
you can trade guys several times.
That's how the Brassard deal was able to happen, because it wasn't technically a three-way deal. It was separate deals because of. By the way, we didn't talk about the fact that deal got shot down the first time.
Yeah, well,
Because they had to
it was so complicated. It's good. It means they're
When
getting
was the
creative.
last time a deal got shot down and we learned about it? By the league.
but let's go on to Duchene for a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Is it because he's been so bad?
Yeah,
Good. He's been good recently.
Yeah, he's been
recently
good
he
for
has.
3 weeks.
We know Matt Duchene's a good
How
player.
long has he
though.
been a Sen?
3 months? Nah. Yeah.
Here, look it up.
That was
November. Look it up.
It was
Yeah.
November.
Look it up. Go through his game by game. I want to know. Yes, Adam?
I am just what I want to say is that I think Matt Duchene is the guy that moves at the deadline that no one's talking about. Like, here's the thing: if
You
the
can
Leafs,
get so much. But can you?
Well, that's the thing. You've got that extra
Sen's
deal.
gonna ice a freaking team.
Matt Duchene played 14 games with Colorado, where he had 4 goals and 6 assists, 10 points.
That's fine.
And he played 47 games with Ottawa, where he has 13 goals, 16 assists, 29 points.
That's good. Ish. At very like if you take into account that he basically didn't score for the first month, that
Yeah.
means he's been on fire recently, doesn't it?
on a terrible team.
Yeah.
And he's got great chemistry with Hoffman. And if you're looking for a centerman, like look at sorry for everybody that I just got their ear exploded. I banged.
So Matt Duchene to Toronto.
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
All right.
Well, I mean,
Put Kadri on like the wing.
but that's the thing. Like, I look at a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I look at a guy like Matt Duchene, and I don't think there's a way that the Oilers can win trading Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I think you got to look at trading Leon Draisaitl. That's a different conversation.
No. The thing that happens next season is the Oilers make an almighty comeback, and it is the Twitter event of the season.
Oh, it'll be fun.
The Revenge of the Edmonton Oilers Part 2.
It's a good point.
And this time,
I hope it happens.
And this time, no one's like, good for you. Like they were 2 years ago. Everyone's like, that's great. You snapped the streak. They are going to be so much more jaded and angry. It's just going to be an entire fan base being Kylo Ren. And now we all have to pay. We all have to suffer. They're 100% the dark side.
Matt, the best thing about a lot has been made of the Griffin Reinhart trade that gave the Islanders Matt Barzal, And all Oilers fans will say is, we wouldn't have picked Barzal anyway. And it's like, that is not a compliment.
That's not a good defense. One thing I'll never understand about a lot of Oilers fans on Twitter, just a lot, not all of you, is you can be like, the Oilers suck. Or no, not you. You're not allowed to say it. They go, the Oilers suck. And you go, yeah, such and such trade was stupid. And they'll go, whoa, hey, asshole. What are you talking about? Taylor Hall was a bum and Jordan Eberle was a bum and we would have never drafted. I'm like, do you see? How aren't you making a connection with the issue, with your team? They can't be shit and you defend every move. At some point, they might have made a mistake. Or 2 or 9.
Well,
why are they shit? We seem to agree they're shit.
Yeah.
Tell me. We got nothing. All right, fine. They just stay that way forever.
I agree,
most baffling thing. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to be your friend here and just talk hockey.
Well, it's like when you wrote that article last year. It's like, as a Leafs fan, I'm really happy for the success of the Oilers. We don't need your pity, Toronto fans.
So pissed. Anyway. I'm stealing this from Jim Norton, but they got the personality skills of a hornet. Just the whole fan base.
Well, I can't blame them for being mad right now. But to me, if you're Ottawa, like if you're the Leafs, and you're looking for...
I agree. Screw the Oilers. Get back to the Leafs.
If you're looking for... the Leafs are going to be looking for a third-line center next year. Or this summer. Draft, free agency, trade, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. The Leafs are going to be looking for a third-line center. A guy like Matt Duchene, a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, those guys, you can trade for those guys. You could try to sign like a Paul Stastny, who's going to be way too expensive and 34. But like, what is your... What's like? That's a question. Like, is it Nylander? Is Nylander going to do that? Is that what's going to happen? If that happens, that's fine.
He's getting his audition right now, and what a holy terror that friggin' line was against the Bruins.
They were pretty good.
That line was absolutely unbelievable.
Do you think that? Because what was the line again? It was
Nylander in the middle. I think Hyman on the left and Marner on the right.
Mm-hmm. Scary.
But like the wingers, I think they interchanged because like when Marner scored his goal, he was on the left side of the ice, and Nylander froze the Bruins roster. Guys on the bench fell down.
Did you see the Kapanen move on?
Oh my God! Retire. Go home. Take off your skate. He should have just sat like on his butt on the ice and undone his skates, and just started like register for LinkedIn and like start finding another job.
The thing is that the Leafs have got to find a solution at that position. And I would think going into next year, if Nylander is going to be the third center, and let's talk about the Leafs for a second, because they have to weigh this stuff. Nylander being the third center is fine because there's enough winger support. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews and Kasperi Kapanen. You'll keep Hyman with him. It's who's his right winger going to be? Whatever, doesn't matter. And then you've got Nylander at center. You've got Kadri at center. To me, it's the thing they're going to have to figure out because they're going to want to stop paying second-round picks for a fourth-line center every deadline is what are you going to do at fourth line? And if Mechanics ends up working out, I know that he's a Montreal Canadiens favorite. But if he ends up working out really well here, tell me why Toronto doesn't go, listen, what do we got to do to keep you?
I'd be interested. I'd also...
Because he's got the thing that he has that Brian Boyle didn't. And I thought Brian Boyle the Leafs should re-sign Brian Boyle, even though we're not... And it was an expensive contract in New Jersey, but he's still a really great player, and he gave that fourth line stability. The thing that he doesn't have is the speed. Mechanics has the speed, and that's what they loved about Patrick Marleau. If he has the speed to keep up with this young team, that's the perfect fit. So overpay for him.
I'd like to see it before, because next year he's going to be 36, so we'll see how he does at 35 going into the playoffs, but if he does have the speed, then there's a there.
The Leafs are a huge question mark. And one thing I learned yesterday from Justin Bourne's Twitter that I did not know is on top of being an offensive god in the AHL, Andreas Johnsson kills penalties. And he's very responsible defensively, and this is coming from a guy who worked for the team. By the way, another thing Bourne said was, I think it was Leafs fans should like this deal, which I found very confusing, because that's a guy who worked for the team and 2 prospects were leaving. I don't know. I found that very interesting. But yeah, Jansson's making this team next year. So we know that much, but still at center, I don't know what the answer is.
Is Frederick Gauthier out of the question now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's out of the I mean, it's possible he continues to develop, but like he's got to take a pretty significant jump. And maybe that happens, right? Like he was basically starting from the ground up after breaking his leg. One thing I wonder if it facilitated this trade was Aaltonen has been playing very well recently. Mm-hmm. And then he got knocked out. So your security blanket there. I mean, one of the Leafs centers gets injured. Okay. Your temporary fix is Nylander at center. So you try that. What if it stinks? Okay, well, you don't have very much time left, so you try Marleau at center. Well, what if you're not totally happy with that? What if someone else gets hurt? You got to move more up? Or like, who's your next call up? Because with Aaltonen hurt, it's GOAT. Mm-hmm. After that, like, who's the next center even under contract?
Well,
I think it's Adam Brooks.
You got to have Patrick Marleau at that point playing center.
Well, now you're forced into a situation that you don't even want, and we know the player doesn't even want. So,
but I think if it comes down to the playoffs, Patrick Marleau's not going to care. He's not going to look at you and go, "Listen, coach, I understand Patrick Marleau going, I don't want to play 60 games at center." But if it came down to it, Patrick Marleau would be like, "Listen, Patrick, we're going for the Stanley Cup. You've never won one of those. Do you have an issue playing center?" Yeah. He'd be like, "No, I don't have a problem."
You're also talking about a scenario where 3 guys just got injured in your head.
It happens.
It does happen, but it's also a made-up situation.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a made-up situation. You're right.
Yeah.
I just think it's a great...
Well, that's what this whole deadline is all about.
Yeah.
You're trying to look into the future and see what you're going to be a month from now. And then a month from now, you hopefully have a 2-month war ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So it's all hypothetical, right? You're trying to plan 3 months out, ideally. It's hard.
Plekanec is a great pickup for the Leafs. It's going to be, I think it's solid depth. It's perfect. Now the question is, do you go any further? We know McDonagh's on the available. Mm-hmm. But if Rick Nash brought A, McDonagh's going to bring A+. And he's a left-handed shot. Not that it matters all that much, but it sort of matters. So you're gonna have 4 left-handed shots in your top 4 on defense.
Hey, I'm a defenseman. I have 3 points in the last 4 games. I haven't taken a penalty for 14 straight games. Who am I?
Roman Polak.
Roman frickin' Polak. Credit where credit's due, man.
So wait, right? Are you saying Polak for McDonough straight up?
Yep. Sell high. No, to Polak's credit, and I harp on him, and boy, I sure would still like to see the Leafs upgrade on him. Mm-hmm. But we know the price is probably high, right? And that's maybe something that you address in the offseason instead. Polak did this last year. Played poorly. Mid-season, still pretty bad. And then about the last 20 games or so, him and Matt Hunwick too, actually, played really, really well. And Polak carried that play into the playoffs where he then fell awkwardly and broke his leg. I wonder if he's turning it on again. Because... no, it couldn't be. I don't know. Put it this way. My faith in him is growing. I am well aware he's not a great option there, but my faith in him is growing a little bit.
Did the Leafs make a move for Ryan McDonagh?
Nah. And, nah. I don't want to even know what that would cost. I don't like the idea of the Leafs making one of these huge picks and prospects deals. Mm-hmm. Like, Plekanec doesn't fall into that. You're giving up a second and a guy who might make it and a guy who might make it. So you're giving up 3 guys who may or may not even make it. But then you start getting into, like, people are talking about, like, would you trade Liljegren for, like, not McDonough? Actually, I did see a couple of people say McDonough. No, absolutely not. Carlson. Well, no, it's not happening. Like, Liljegren, ideally, Liljegren becomes somewhat similar to Carlson. It's going to be very difficult to get anyone to be even 80% of Karlsson, but like they've drafted pretty well at certain parts, and they've done a good job of getting this depth. Why is everyone so eager to just give it all away? The Leafs are doing it properly. They're building for sustained success, and I don't think they're going to completely blow it all on one playoff run that is 2 years into the positive end of a rebuild. I just don't see it happening. I don't think they get McDonagh. I mean, they're strong on the left side. Mm-hmm. That's like the only part of the defense. The only half, or it's the strongest half of the defense. Now you're looking at the right, and you're looking at overpaying no matter what. And Tanev might not even be back before the playoffs start if you're thinking about him. So maybe that's a move they look at in the offseason. In terms of this deadline, I can't see them doing much more other than, I don't know, maybe you look at, hey, how about you claim Johnny Oduya off waivers?
I don't think that it kills you. Why not?
So no JVR deal.
No.
At 3:01 tomorrow, JVR is a Leaf.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Is that the right move?
Dude, like,
I'm split down the
Thinking
middle,
about
man.
what you could get for him.
I'm split down the middle.
Is it the right
but
move?
what are you hoping to get? Right?
You're hoping to get something that makes you great in 2019.
Look at them now. He's their second leading goal scorer. When this guy touches the puck, the fucking puck finds it's magnetized to the back of the other team's net. Mm-hmm. I would have been with you maybe a month or so ago, but holy shit. All this guy does is score goals. And now, he's already playing 10, 12 minutes a night, especially when the Leafs are winning, and the Leafs just got deeper.
Isn't that a case for you don't need him?
I mean, listen,
Keep him.
I have
Keep him.
said in the last show, I think
him.
he would bring a lot and it would be great and that sort of thing. But the other side of it is,
I bet you could still deal his rights at the draft.
oh yeah,
Not nearly as much,
Yeah.
but I bet you could.
Sure.
I think with JVR, it's a question of what school of thought you're with. Are you with renting your own players at the deadline? You know what I mean? Because most people are looking for what he brings, right? And the issue is that if you trade JVR, to me, it's not an effect on the room. I think that they would still be a great team or whatever, but you don't know what Andreas Johnson looks like. Or Janssen. You don't know what he looks like. You don't know what he brings at the NHL level. What if he comes up and he loses all his confidence? Listen, I'm not saying it would happen.
I got you. Okay.
But my point is, JVR is, you know what JVR is, and you know how to use him. You have a coach that's coached him for almost 3 seasons now.
Yeah.
Why not just go for it? You're not going to re-sign him. You can't afford him. Fine. You can train the next guy from training camp on. So that's the one side. The other side is you get a whole bunch of assets for him. Okay, so I would like to know what those are.
Yeah.
And if the Leafs did get an offer that kind of blew them away and they were able to get someone who was on the verge of, say, the NHL the way Sergachev was before this season, then it's like, okay, well, maybe you look at that deal. But I don't see this Leafs team or this Leafs management going, we gotta have him, because there's other players in the system. It's like the cupboards are not bare. We have Carl Grundstrom as well.
If Boston offered you the exact same package that they offered for Rick Nash, do you take that for JVR?
No.
You can keep Matt Bolesky, and it's going to have to be more.
No.
It's going to have to be more.
Okay.
I like
Even with the first round pick in there?
No. The whole point of getting stuff in a trade is so that you can win the Stanley Cup. And the Leafs are, look, the Atlantic, no one's a gimme.
No one.
Tampa, Boston, Leafs, it's going to be a dogfight, and the survivor, who will probably be missing several limbs, then gets the great honor of going to the third round, and let's be honest, probably playing the Penguins. And look, winning the Stanley Cup is
Watch
hard.
out for Philly.
It's hard. So, you're never going to have a clear path. The Leafs look at this, they look at their team right now, and they go, you know what? We got a shot. Do you agree that they have a shot?
Definitely. Every team has a shot.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I don't think anybody going into the playoffs this year has better than a 12% shot.
Go for it. Yeah, that's the funny thing. So teams like Tampa, Boston, and the Leafs, I think I've seen the same chart. God, what's it from? Like Hockey Graphs?
I don't like those charts, to be honest.
Oh,
They're fun. I think they're fun.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton won. So
Wow. What? Wow. Half of the comments I've read over the past week. Wow.
odds of winning, it doesn't really mean anything. It changes day to day. You win a game.
Why do you hate
odds
Nate
of-
Silver? Let's talk about this. No, yeah, those are three of the top 5 teams in the league, whatever. But none of them have that high a chance of winning the cup because they all have to go through each other.
They all have a 1 in 8 chance to win the cup, is what percentage it is.
Pittsburgh won the damn cup last year, and they were in the exact same scenario. In fact, it was worse. So, that's all
Pittsburgh
I'm
is,
saying.
man, that center depth is unbelievable. It's just crazy.
Put it up against the Leafs.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I'm excited for what the
I
Leafs
still
will
give them
do.
the edge, but holy shit.
I think the players that they're going to lose are replaceable guys. My question will be at center. What will they do at center?
Crosby,
Third line center.
Malkin, Brassard, Sheahan.
I'm talking about after playoffs, but yeah.
No, wait, though. Crosby, Malkin, Brassard, Sheahan up against Matthews, Kadri, Bozak, Plekanec.
It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. I mean,
I think Pittsburgh has the edge there.
Oh, decidedly they have the
But-
edge. Decidedly
Now
they
you
have
look
the
at the
edge.
wings.
Maybe not so much on the wing.
I mean, geez, they got Kessel and geez, they got Gensel, but the Leafs have their monsters as well. Now you're looking at defense, goaltending. It's boy, oh boy.
But Chris
I'm
Letang is back.
excited.
Remember, Chris Letang isn't missing the playoffs this year. He's going to play.
No.
So, I mean,
Well, yeah, but keep in mind that they just lost Ryan Reeves, so now they're all going to get hurt.
that's true.
So
But if the Leafs don't play Matt Martin, so will they. You know what it would have been? It'll just be Matt Martin. The Leafs will just dress Matt Martin and everybody else will be injured, including Penguins players.
Mitch Marner got hurt last season. I want to know where Matt Martin was.
It's a good point.
I just wanna know.
Mark Letestu and Pat Maroon were told by Peter Chiarelli to pack extra outfits ahead of their road trip. Obviously,
no.
Letestu has already been traded. Pat Maroon will be traded. What do you think Pat Maroon brings?
Pat Maroon is exactly the sort of player who I wouldn't want to play in a playoff series. Like just
Big and
yeah, look,
mean
it's
and-
one thing if I got to play you once every now and again. 4 to 7 games in a row of him. That's the kind of player who, even if you lose, takes a chunk out of your team. Especially if you're, man, a team like the Leafs, they do not have a ton of size on the back end. We know what the Leafs D-core is good at doing. They move the puck and they put up a bunch of points. But they're not big. And poor, like, Nikita Zaitsev. Like, that's a regular size dude. And he plays like an absolute honey badger. He's the closest comparable to Soshnikov they have on the back end on account of, like, he just forgets what size he is. But Zaitsev is exactly the defenseman the Leafs would throw out against Maroon. And Maroon would just beat the shit out of him for 4 to 7 games. And then even if you win, you go into the next series and Zaitsev's like, I didn't hear no bell. Like, just friggin' wobbling. So that's what he brings. And he's a guy who, you put him with a playmaking center. He can at least keep up with them. He can bang in a few goals. He's a big belligerent, abusive body in
I
front.
certainly hope he doesn't end up in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. I hope. I hope the West loads up tomorrow.
Here's what I think's going to happen. Tampa's going to get Carlson, and then they're going to get Maroon because nothing is fair. Oh. So what they'll do is they'll give up Nemestikov, and they'll give up their futures and whatever, and they'll go for it, and they'll have Carlson and whatever, and they'll be dominant for the next year and a half, and they're going to have Maroon, and they're going to steamroll whoever they play in the first
Who's
round.
the bottom wild card right now in the East?
It is the Columbus Blue Jackets.
So right now,
That'd be a tough series. I mean, I think
if Tampa has Carlson,
Tampa wins that handily.
yeah, I'm gonna go with
Unless Bobrovsky, Bobo stands on his head.
Do you think Kane ends up at Tampa instead of Carlson and
Oh my
Maroon?
God,
Oh, that's bad. I don't know how they do that cap-wise, but
I don't think they do it.
No.
Okay, let's say Carolina makes
I
that
think Kane's
final
gonna
spot.
end up
Oh wow,
somewhere
there are 2
weird.
teams out now. Oh my God. So, okay, looking at two teams who are, okay, here's your wild card picture, right? So,
You said okay like 4 times.
I know, I'm sorry. You got New Jersey with 72 points. They're sitting decently on that top wild card spot. So now
They
we
could
go
even challenge for the top 3 in the division there.
exactly. So now we go 5 points down to Columbus with 67 points. Why did it have to be 67? The Islanders are only 2 points back. Hurricanes 3. Florida 5.
Games in hand.
And they have games in hand, so that's pretty good. And Red Wings fans are like, why don't you get to us, dude? You're already selling. Come on, let's be honest.
That's pretty much it.
Who out of those teams gives Tampa any trouble? Like, let's say Carolina squeaks in there. How soon after does Cam Ward retire? How many, like on the ice right there after game 4?
Game 5. Give him 1.
No, I won't. I won't. Islanders? You think Halak just has a new career as a stop sign in Montreal?
The Islanders can get hot enough to make anything a series because they were so good in that middle section of like December, late December to mid-January.
Can I throw out a really stupid suggestion? You know what the Islanders should do?
Evander Kane?
Sell.
They should try to acquire, for as cheaply as they can, one of the hottest goalies in the Atlantic Division. Niemi.
Is he actually?
Ever since going to Montreal, he's been gold.
Carey Price
They
is
should do it.
injured.
They should
and
absolutely do it.
Carey Price is injured. Montreal has whoever the other goalie is on emergency basis, so they can't trade him.
Oh, Charlie
Charlie's up for emergency basis.
Or Chuckles Lindgren?
So yeah,
Damn.
can't do that.
All right, well, I
now.
think
So give him, make the trade Chris Gibson, who the Islanders have. So you give them a goalie in exchange for Niemi. So Chris Gibson and a late pick for Niemi.
Found money.
Maybe.
I find it interesting. Evander Kane, to me, if I'm the Islanders, that's a guy I target. That's a pretty scary guy on their wing. Don't you think?
That's not their issue. So they actually did make a buy. I forgot. There's another trade we forgot to mention. They got Brandon Davidson.
Yes.
From Edmonton for a third.
And Montreal waived him earlier this year.
LMAO.
Yeah, that's a third round pick they literally just threw in the garbage. Wow.
What was that last year? Who waived Mike Condon? And then
Ottawa,
Pittsburgh got him.
Montreal. Ottawa, Montreal. Wasn't he in Montreal?
Oh my God, in Montreal. That was Mike Condon. So I think Montreal waived Mike Condon. Pittsburgh scooped him up. He was decent. They traded him to Ottawa for a fifth.
Yeah.
That's the second time in as many years that's happened to Montreal. That sucks. That sucks. Oh, that's funny. No, yeah. So the Islanders, I mean, their need is on the back end. I mean, I guess you address a strength to make it even stronger, but like, holy shit. Like, we haven't had a podcast since the Islanders game. Mm-hmm. Barzal is absolutely out of his mind good.
He's so good.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I don't think Tavares is leaving.
No!
Why?
No, there's no chance. I would love him to be a Leaf. You can't
it's nice to joke
look
about
at that kid play and be like, yeah, we have a chance to do something.
And Anders Lee is the most underrated superstar in the NHL.
Yes.
And you just locked up Josh Bailey.
For
Tavares isn't
$5
going
million
anywhere.
a year.
Yeah, Tavares isn't going anywhere. No.
Damn.
No way.
Okay, so let's do. Let's talk about this. Okay, so tomorrow, obviously, trade deadline day. Watch Sportsnet because we love Sportsnet.
You're probably watching it right now as you listen to
Also,
this.
side
really
note
long
on
show.
the Islanders before we move on. This year's draft picks, they got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and all their other picks, except for a 6th. So they got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Man, they could make.
They're going to load up. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I sense that we're winding down, so I'm checking Twitter to make sure nothing's happened.
Nothing's happened.
Adam's got it covered.
Okay, so just so you know, we are doing a trade deadline wrap-up show. And
That's
that will be
Tuesday.
48 hours from now. So Tuesday morning, actually less than 48 hours. Let's do the press conference.
Are you guys aware of the current draft order if the NHL season ended today?
Well, like Son's lottery?
The Sans lottery,
No,
how it would shape out.
I do not.
The first pick would go to the Coyotes, the second pick to the Sabres, the third pick to the Senators, the fourth pick to to the Canucks, the 5th pick to the Canadiens, the 6th pick to the Oilers. So, 3 through 6, 4 Canadian teams. How disappointed are you in our country?
Not.
No, I'm not.
We saw this coming.
Saw it coming with Montreal for sure. Ottawa was a surprise last year. I didn't think they were going to be good last year, and then they were great. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll give them a flyer on this year, and they weren't. And so
I keep going back and forth with Montreal. They shouldn't be this bad.
yes, they should.
A couple things happened.
Steve.
Weber was out.
Steve.
And Price has
They
just
should
not been very
They
good.
don't have a lineup, man.
Yeah, they don't.
They have no centers. This is a center and goalie league. There's no centers. They got a winger who's a career winger to play center. And they traded their top defensive prospect to get him. Nothing against Jonathan Drouin, but let's be honest. Is that how you want to have your number one center, a guy who might be able to play the position? And then midway through the year, you realize, oh, no, he's probably better on the wing.
Hey, you know what? This trade aside, potentially good news for Leaf fans. It looks like Jeff Molson is prepared to let Bergevin fix his own mess. Great. Good.
He's
luck,
got
buddy.
the full confidence. They tweeted that yesterday.
Good luck.
It's awesome.
Good luck.
I like the idea of Rasmus Dahlin ending up in Arizona. I like the idea of him ending up nowhere near this division. I don't want
I was
him
like, where are you going with this?
I don't want him. I don't want him anywhere close geographically to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Don't need it. Listen, Jack Eichel is who he is with Buffalo, and and he's making the money that he's making. I don't want Buffalo to have another shot. Okay. No, I just as a Leaf fan, no offense, Buffalo, but seriously, I don't want them to have another shot at having a generational player.
You know what I love is when people get smarter than they are about the Sabres. When they're like, Sabres are a great example that tanking doesn't always mean success. Yeah, sorry, we should have mentioned that the asterisk is you need to be smart. I'm sorry. Did we need to mention that you can't be idiots about your rebuild?
They also signed a bunch of ridiculous contracts.
Yeah.
Matt Molson.
Yeah.
And Kyle Okposo.
The asterisk is you should try to make a good team as well as tank.
And maybe take more than 1 year to do it.
I'm sorry that we didn't mention that you should try to be good when trying to be good. What the hell are you talking about?
know, it's dumb.
Tanking doesn't always work. Yeah, if you're not an idiot, yes, it does. Harsh, true. I don't
Jason
care.
Pominville is also signed through next year for $5.6 million. That's a good deal.
And that was a trade before the season.
Anyways, second question. Tyler Patico, 89, wants to know, what are some fun made-up teams we may see in the next World Cup of Hockey?
Oh, yeah, congrats to the Olympic athletes of Russia, I guess, on winning that gold. Yeah, speaking of made-up teams. Made-up teams in the next World Cup of Hockey, I mean...
Most of Asia.
Was Germany... No, Germany was part of Team Europe.
Yeah.
So maybe Germany, but that's not a made-up team. So you're asking for made-up teams.
Why can't we just invite 16 countries and just have a system where we play an actual World Cup with 16 countries?
Oh, so how many was it? 8?
Yeah. Why can't we have 16?
Well, you can
Because-
do 8 countries as well if you want.
I just like 16 because it involves crazy, like Slovenia. I want to see Germany. I want to see Switzerland. I want to see Norway. I want to see Denmark. I want to see lesser countries. I want to see England and Italy put something forward. You know what I mean? I love when you watch the FIFA World Cup, there's countries in there you're like, oh yeah, that is a country.
How deep is hockey? How deep is hockey that you would get interesting games each time? I don't think
I
it's
would
that
love to
deep.
see an Italy-Slovenia game. I think that would be amazing.
Slovenia would kick the shit out of them.
Do you want to see a 16-0 game? No. Nobody wants that for the sport.
I'm not saying I don't want to say that. Listen, it's. I
turn
just
into
feel
Matthew
like
McConaughey there.
I just don't want. I don't want the some of Europe, North American young stars BS. If you're going to call it the World Cup, fine. There are going to be dominant teams, but there are dominant teams in the Soccer World Cup. It's always Brazil, Portugal, Netherlands. These are always the good teams.
Yeah, but you don't see 8-0 soccer games. Like, nobody gets embarrassed once they make the World Cup because soccer runs so deep. Like, Canada's 180 in the world or whatever, you know?
I'm trying to think.
We once got up to 67, you know?
Did we?
I think something like that. We won the Gold Cup once, and
I still remember.
We'll be in it when we host.
I still remember a few years ago.
Maybe not even then.
Imagine. A few years ago, Canada's men, I should specify, because Canada's women are really good. Canada's men, I remember, were tied for 99th with Belize, which up until I heard a Jadakiss song where he mentioned Belize, I did not know was a place.
Mm-hmm. Canadian women are incredible.
And the men, not so much.
Yeah.
Like, who could even ice a team? Like, I'm trying to think of countries who weren't in it last time who could maybe come in and do something. Potentially Denmark?
Well, Germany. With Leon Draisaitl.
But the thing about all that is the whole tournament was a slight sham to A, just give a middle finger to the Olympics, and B, just promote NHL players. You invite a team like Denmark, there's going to be a few NHLers in there, and you showcase how good Freddie Anderson is, but like, he was the goalie for Team Europe before he got hurt, so you were going to do that anyway.
But the NHL's job is to grow the game. Grow the game. Grow it.
I beg to differ, whispered Gary Bettman, who just wants to make money and is also having to deal with Eugene Melnyk.
Team Canada currently 89th in the world in the FIFA rankings.
Hey!
It's not bad.
Moving on.
We were at 117 in 2016. So
that's a staggering jump.
Yeah.
I want to know what Central American country they tied to move up the rankings that much. What was the 1-1 draw they had?
with Armenia.
Like Costa Rica or something like that.
Armenia is currently at 91, so I mentioned them.
Oh, I was like, yeah, we all know the Central American country of Armenia, Jesse, because geography.
Congo is currently at 88.
Hey, not bad.
So, like, we're one behind Congo.
Listen, with the amount of immigration in this country, with the amount of resources available to this country, to be honest, there is absolutely no reason why we are not better than we should. It's absolute incompetence for sure. And that's why they moved the women's head coach over to the men's side so he can clean some shit up there, because he did such a great job on the women's program, and obviously we have some absolute studs for
wasn't there a controversy with that?
Well, I mean, I think it was a lot of people were like, why are you taking from a strength, which is your women's program, to address a weakness, which is your men's program? And I think it's a legitimate argument. But
I don't know enough
at the same time,
I don't know enough
they want both programs to do well, and Herdman's a good coach, so it's Herdman, right?
Yeah, they were really upset because they didn't tell any of the players before this.
Christine St. Clair was told.
Yes.
She tweeted that after. She said, I had no words. And then people were like, you didn't tell her? And she's like, we talked earlier this week. But like, she still was shocked by it.
Yeah. And the like rumors are that he kind of bullied them into the position because he wanted to leave. And then he's like, if you want me to stay, I want the keys to the men's team. They're like, okay, you can have it. And there's a little bit of controversy, but who knows?
Confused as to
Maybe
why you would
good.
want that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to win?
Yeah.
Like, you got a shot at winning every time.
But I guess the men's program still holds so much more prestige. But like, one's a
what
good,
are you looking for? Holy
one's a
shit,
good
we
team.
beat Mexico!
Yeah.
Like, that's the pinnacle of the Canadian men's team right now, isn't it?
So it made no sense to me.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know enough about
the women's program, though. Whoever steps in as the head coach there is stepping into a friggin' dynasty.
Yep.
So good for them, and it gives somebody else the opportunity to be a great head coach there.
Mm-hmm. Did we talk about the women's gold medal game?
No.
Sucks that it was decided in a shootout.
We got outplayed.
Yeah, the Americans were. You know what would have been the real controversy if Canada had won in the shootout?
Yeah.
After the Americans dominated overtime. Dominated it. That was a shame. Didn't like seeing it. What a shame for Germany. Just the way they lost to
That sucks.
the Olympic athletes.
That I'm more upset about. Like, okay, the Canadian women.
That goalie.
You lose a hockey game sometimes,
goalie.
but it was like, holy crap for Germany. They really could have won the gold.
He went for the worst poke check of all time and like bailed halfway through and just couldn't have made it easier for Russia.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any concluding thoughts on the Olympic tournament? Now that we've seen one without NHL players?
I think because of where I'm at in my life, I love the Olympics normally. And summer and winter, I love them. I paid almost zero attention to these Olympics. I'm not going to lie. And it's just because I came back from honeymoon. There's some stuff going on in my personal life that, not bad stuff, but there's a lot of complicated stuff going on in my personal life at the moment. And we have this show to worry about. We've got trade deadline. We've got all this stuff. Normally, we're paying attention to it because the NHLers are there, right? So, we've got a show that focuses on that. It's a critical time here. I've got another 2 shows to worry about. For me, I didn't pay any attention. So I really don't have an opinion, and I feel bad about that, but at the same time, it's like sometimes life gets in the way, man, and you can't focus on everything.
Look at the length of today's show. We were talking about breaking news the entire time, and then we got to the Olympics. There's stuff to talk about, guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got more to talk about than, I don't know, who was it? Kevin Poulin winning a bronze? It's a cool story. It's cool that they got to do that, but let's be honest here, guys. Now, the one tweet I got that I thought was really interesting is the Olympics inadvertently did more to grow the game than it potentially would have if the NHLers had gone.
I agree.
Because a lot of people in Germany were up early in the morning to watch Germany compete for gold. I think it would have been better if they won, but that is a country, that's a perfect example of a country that should be way better at hockey, but they just have their priorities elsewhere. The Americans should be better at hockey than they are, and they're already really good at it, but all their star athletes go into other sports, right? So, Germany's big in soccer. I think it's soccer that's their big thing.
Oh, they're amazing.
They always do well at the Olympics, winter and summer. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's other stuff going on in Germany, man. But if you build interest, and there is some, but if you build it even more, Germany could easily be a hockey powerhouse.
For sure. There's no reason. They got the climate. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Another team or another country emerging is good.
And money.
Money, yeah.
You need money to play hockey, unfortunately.
But another country emerging on the hockey scene is a great thing. We need that. Mm-hmm. We need that.
Yeah, I tweeted it and got shit for it again. But, look, you could have Canada in there again, and you could have, one of the same half dozen countries in there again. Or you can have another team get a crack at it. And Germany was in there. I think they medaled for the first time, or the first time in a very long time. There's things it's still crazy to me that in 2018 we're hearing something I think the Japanese women's team scored a goal and everyone's that's their first goal. I'm holy shit, forget first win, first goal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's nuts, man. That's crazy. Or maybe I'm wrong there, or maybe it was the first win or something like that. But it's just even in the World Cup, every now and then a team sneaks in there and you go, Senegal.
Yeah.
You're in the final 8.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's
or
cool.
what was that one? It would have been 8 years ago now, but most of the final 8 was how the hell did you get here?
It's the best part.
South Korea was in there or something like that. It's the best part.
That's when that happens, it's the best. It's always more fun when those teams happen. So
I never cared about the Euro tournament more than when Greece won.
Yeah, how big was that?
Yeah, and I'm half English, half Italian. And I'm pretty sure Italy has won it in recent memory. But when Greece won, it was cool. And the games weren't even entertaining. They played a boring defensive style, but I was holy shit.
They're winning.
Greece.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got in there and won.
Something we should keep in mind, 33% of the Leafs' remaining games are against the last place Sabres and the Skeleton Habs team.
Wow.
And that is from Flo Jurgensen at Joey Ferg.
And they play less games down the stretch than both Boston and Tampa.
Yeah. I keep waiting for Boston to catch up. Are we just going to finish a week and a half before they do?
It's going to finally happen.
When does that happen?
It's going to finally happen. The Leafs have played the most games in the league, or been tied with St. Louis since November. It's insane. It's insane. Well, remember how ridiculous December was? Mm-hmm. And weirdly, they started to take a dip. Their schedule sucked.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Right now, we're the only team in the NHL to have played 64 games.
It's crazy. Imagine if McElhinney hadn't been as good as he is.
We've got a trade.
Oh, boy.
Nashville Predators acquire Brandon Bolig and goaltender Troy Groshnik from the Sharks.
I didn't know Bolig was on the Sharks.
I didn't know either. So there's your Ryan Reeves. Brandon Bollig. Okay, so here's the deal.
So they got 4 goalies now, if I'm not mistaken.
Bollig and Troy Groshnick to the San Jose Sharks for a 6th round pick in the 2018 draft.
No, to the Preds.
From the Sharks. Sorry, in exchange for the 6th.
So what do you hear? Get
Sharks get a 6th round pick from the Preds. Bollig and Groshnick end up with the Predators.
That's bizarre. Maybe there's injuries I don't know about, because I think they have. Rene's obviously having a potential Vezina conversation season. Then you got UC Saros, I think Anders Lindback, and now you got Grosnick.
Mm-hmm. And Grosnick's not had the best year.
And you take on 2 roster spots.
He has a 298 GAA and a 902 save percentage in 20 games with Barracuda this year. This year. So,
Also, that's the Sharks freeing up a little bit of room. I have a feeling they're in on Carlson. I think tomorrow's going to be nuts.
Final question before we go.
Okay.
What are you guys doing tomorrow, Saturday at noon?
What?
Tomorrow, Saturday. Next Saturday at noon.
That was holy smokes.
Yes.
It's been a long show. What are you doing next Saturday at noon?
I don't know why.
If you left here from Toronto, Canada.
Oh, that's I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be at what the hell is the place called? Oh no. What's the new crazy place with all the arcade games?
The Rec Room?
The Rec Room. Thank you. I'm going to be at the Rec Room doing puck talks with Myrtle and Jack and Soph and the crew.
If you had left here for Memorial Stadium at noon on Saturday, you could get there in time for the Leafs game.
No, you absolutely couldn't.
Driving.
Oh.
It's an 8-hour drive.
Yeah, there's going to be no traffic. You're right.
Just say, we should have road tripped it.
Man, I'm not going to road trip it to see a game where Matthews isn't playing. Come on. By the way, doesn't that suck?
Hey, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if Thomas Plekanec wins a Stanley Cup with the Leafs?
That'd be fun.
That's so heartbreaking.
Won't that be awesome?
Well, wouldn't it be fun if we won the Stanley Cup?
That'd be great. I mean, that'd be great. But wouldn't it be extra great with Thomas Plekanec?
Here's what I need. Matthews hoists the cup first. Passes the cup to Patrick Marleau, who hoists the cup, crying. This is his Ray Bork moment. Mwah, kisses the cup, hands it to Tomas Plekanec, tears pouring into his turtleneck, just soaking it, along with the blood and sweat that he spent to win this thing his entire life. And Plekanec then hands it to Lou Lamoriello. The camera has to pan down. And he lifts the cup above his head. And the most subtle of smirks crosses his face. And into the camera, he simply says, "Kneel." Let the hearts across the league break. The Leafs finally won. And for some reason, they take it out on the Sharks. And also the Habs. Rip their hearts out of their chest. It's our turn now. The Marleau one's unnecessary. But the Plekanec one's pretty funny. It's going to be weird seeing him in a Leafs jersey, I'm not going to
lie. They said he might play tomorrow night.
Yep.
Wow.
Against the Lightning.
Yes.
When the Leafs play back-to-backs and certainly won't be caught by anyone and will still have the most games played in the league. Cool.
I'm telling you, the Leafs
when is it going to happen?
The Leafs are going to finish up 2 weeks before everybody else. That's just what's going to happen.
Do the Leafs? Yeah, the Leafs get like 3 weeks off before the playoffs.
I hope so. Hey,
but they make them play a bunch of friendlies for no good reason. Leafs have to play 90 games.
Thanks so much for listening. We love you. We'll be back Tuesday morning. Steve will be exhausted and it'll be hilarious. Because, Steve actually has to work the next 48 hours.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Like wall to wall, like 8-9 hour days, guys.
Not even. Well, you have to do like one LFR Monday.
I am writing a book.
Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Brought to you by by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness.